feel like I cut my fingernails like way more often than other people do. I always need to cut my fingernails.
Maybe so you don't bite them.
It means you're healthy.
I never get long enough.
Does that mean you're happy and
Yep.
healthy?
That means you're...
Like your fingernails grow faster if you're healthier and happier generally.
Is that true?
That is absolutely true, yep.
Maybe just because I don't talk to other people about clipping your fingernails and I don't see anyone else doing it, that I somehow think that nobody else does it and I'm the only person in the world who does it because I don't,
I clip my fingernails a whole lot.
Oh, okay. There you go. Right.
No, you're the only one.
Just nobody else.
No. Once a month, once every 2 months.
Not at all.
Guns on the table, mama in the back room, bitches in the kitchen, water whipping crack phone, clap phone, please respect the trap, homie, when it snap, homie, you a rap, homie. Everybody wanna rap but don't know how. Everybody wanna run when they hear that sound. Everybody think they hard till they face hit ground. Everybody make a choice, it is not profound. Either get money or die, get faded or die, get famous or die, get that stainless or die, get your hands in the sky, you get it between the eyes, get money or die, get money or die.
Can you listen to the middle of the third verse again? There's one word in the main vocal that I was like, maybe that's a little rushed.
Bring it back, homie, all of that money. Gotta pay the pimp like you gotta pay the tax. If you're gonna pay the fuck, you a trick, that's that. If you're gonna name names, you a snitch. You ain't gonna get it if you're so soft-spoken. Flashing lights, Molly dreams, bass down low, DJ screaming last call, that liquor. Dark got dick on hard with visions of her legs up in the air over your face, under her ass, and breaking lamps from beating pussy purple cause she like it fast. That is fast. Let me do that again. Cause she like it fast, what's your fantasy? Ass like Trina, face like B. I'd say your story, try to web her fly ass free. Cause she probably used to ballers and balling you may not be. But shit, this club is about to close and you still ain't pulled you a freak. Shit. I don't know. It felt kind of good, but we should play the whole verse and see how those line up.
Water had never been a friend, hold up. Where had we seen that car before? Blue Acura, dent on the left rear fender. Back again, a sense of deja vu. Strange things you never shake when you wake up in recovery. Suddenly noticing ash covering his head. Raining from the sky, dials home on his cell phone and gets no reply. What the fuck? Where is the babysitter that he overpaid? Body takes over. Randy got disengaged. Michael is running. House is 3 blocks away. Adrenaline compensated, but taking ace since the last time that he ran. God damn it, Mike knows he gotta get home fast as he can. Looks up in his back, close familiar, knows those memories. That was it, but on and keep going. He's gonna get this man, keep holding.
Clipping, I guess somewhat their self-titled album, Clipping, CLPPNG. They're a trio band from LA. They're signed to Sub Pop Records, and Mike was the one that suggested us doing this. And when he framed it, he was kind of like, it's experimental. It's not Death Grips though. I know it's a trio band and I don't know everybody's name in it, but the rapper, this motherfucker got flows for days. Yeah. Who? David. This motherfucker here got flows for days.
We're just gonna hear
Check.
It's pretty cool. What happens if you spin it around and go behind it?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Oops. Then it's the same side. Yeah, I mean.
But it really does feel like you're behind instead of
in
front.
It does.
Actually. Yeah. How are
That's
you
totally
hearing
different.
this?
I can hear it.
Talk
I
again.
can hear it behind me.
Weird. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, baby. It's clipping, bitch.
Okay. Right? Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's cool.
This is like one of the weirder things I've ever done.
I bet it's really weird for you.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This would be like horrible to be able to like hear when you were doing this kind of thing to an actual person. If you could hear it, how they were hearing it, that's terrible. You would never do this. Like, what the fuck?
They must be obvious, right?
I don't think so. It's meant to be like a eardrum.
Or omnis and just then a dense sound blocking the sound.
This is gonna be hilarious to master for vinyl. I pity the fool.
I wonder.
You want it again?
Yeah. Bill, what delivery wise, how do you feel?
That sounds good. I don't know. Whatever.
Is it too weird?
Yeah, let's do it one more time.
Which part?
Lungs full of pine tar, Kush walks the city. Escape of scrappy captains, capes tucked in the aftermath of unassuming blueprints not suitable for bombings. The fires are alarming, the fire alarms are oddly common. A water beetle jitterbugs and litter, kitty cats cross the sidewalk after rats are fat enough to die happy. The savvy climb a nailless pine staircase, all that Jesus walks to where the meter blocks and streets aren't even matter, so they don't. No one pays, no never mind. Higher than the ever-resting deities of better times. Here the sun refracts so much the prisons look like prisms. Rainbow chains ain't shit but long division. A vision of a suited black man peddling dream logic overlooks a park bench. Kids kaleidoscope into an arc and 2x2 a Lorax off the block. The floods are warm and blood is just red-colored chicken stock.
It's really like, oh, we'd play empty rooms with people who knew every word. You know, so it'd be like, oh, there's like 7 people here, but they love us.
She says she got body, body right, teeth right, now sharp, getting body, on the hood, bad bitch, let her know you ain't ever let down you long. Hey, twerk some girl, twerk some girl, twerk some girl, got some girl, got some girl, got some girl, kill some girl, kill some girl, kill some girl, some girl, eat some girl, eat some girl, look at the mirror, turn you on the dresser, then she's made a satin, now we're in the Bible, lying, wine in a goblet,
I really liked Story 2. I thought Story 2 was a really good record about this guy. I guess he was an arsonist or something like that, and he was, frustrated at work, and then, he's on his way home, and then his shit on fire, and his kids in there, and his kids are burning up. Get up. And it's jarring when that fucking alarm clock comes onto the damn speakers, and that's all you hear is that alarm clock. And every time that shit comes on, that shit just startles me, man. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, there's no fucking way they're gonna sit here and have this alarm clock go through the alarm clock as the actual beat of this song. And then it got to the hook, and then he brought in another alarm clock, and it started harmonizing, and then he just built onto it, and the second verse, it was another fucking alarm clock, and then, by the time we get to the third track, it's another. You have to understand, B, that everybody should understand that noise is one of the most annoying noises in the world. And Dabby Diaz was good, so you sitting here, and it's like, it's this juxtaposition of things, and you're sitting here, you're like, yes, no, and it's like, and then when it gets to the end, it's like all of these fucking alarm clocks, and I'm like, I can't fucking stand it. It was driving me fucking bananas, man. This fucking alarm clock, and I was like, this show, dog, like this alarm clock is just pounding you in and pounding you and pounding you.
Was that your favorite track?
Over it.
Who didn't like alarm clock? The Captain Hook. So you didn't like it?
No, I like the alarm clock.
No, I don't think so. It's an alarm metronome. Game don't wait. Heavy, wait. Eyes heavy, but it's time to grind. Motherfucker can't be late. Hold up, wait. Fucking 9 to 5, push work, stay to stay. Shit.
No work, no food, still eating off paper plates. Banana clip is a paperweight, paper mate. Tally how you married to the game. She fucking everybody, but you still put a ring on it. Own it, keep it 100. Homies, homies where the homies. Homies where the homies got your back. Get your backpack, get back to the block. Bring it back to the block. Shit, slinging crack beats, cracks in the second really gap. Put the Glock cock back, lay another body flat.
Were you, is that on? Do you, you had talked about wanting to, like, did you already rewrite a couple of words or something? Like,
In this, what did I did something.
no, I mean, you don't need to, it doesn't, I don't care about the specifics, but I just mean, like, 'cause we talked about this and you said, oh, it kind of sounds like a first verse. I just need to change 2-3 words. I was just making sure you were still happy about that.
I made some of the changes, and I also think in listening to it, it was a delivery issue, I think, in that they were in 2 different sessions.
Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think this sounds great.
Yeah,
I think this is a good second verse.
Exactly.
So do we want to do that one, how I could just kill a man line now, or just...
No, we want to make Rafa do it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Good call.
Cool.
They chilling on Cypress Hill and they still squeezing them hammers. Police be on the scanners. These some obsequious bandits that brandish and flash and function. You fucking vigorous fashion. They flashing a motherfucker. You fucking seeing the passion, forgetting the hunger. This is jungle time to get active and crack it so acrobatic it'll flip in a sec. Sets up in no second guessing. Here in the streets, people sweating for the money.
Okay, chop that, screw that up. Hold that, pass that, tip that tub. Smash that, drop that, back that wood. Act like you don't give a fuck. Lose that balance, lose that touch. Spend that money, smash that nuts. Pop that pussy, beat your chest. Turn that beat up, fuck the rest. Fuck the world, don't take that shit. Put them hands up, sing that shit. Tell that lie, feel that burn. Ride that high, it's your turn. Turn this motherfucker out. Show me what you all about. Twist them fingers, rep your town. Hurry up, it's going down. Call your gun stabler. Call up your enabler. Live up to the flavor. Break your leg, break the table like yeah. Go spring break, go bananas, break your eight. Go gadget, go box, go get that pocket. Go solo to the club. Go get your partner off that bubble. Rockefeller, rock the bells. Rock them all, I lose your L's. Mix your P's up with your Q's. But whatever you gon' do, don't come up in the club on that bullshit. That's how they want that raw shit, that raw.
I love going on tour and getting to see a bunch of like sort of local bands. It's always like really interesting. It's like, well, what does this promoter think is an appropriate act to pair us with? Who are these people? Maybe they're cool, and like sometimes you meet like amazing people that become great friends and collaborators and things. You know, you would never normally run into, and that's the most exciting to me, is like to show up on a bill and be like, I've never heard of any of this.
When the stash low and it's no cash, and you riding no L's, no tax, and she looking like you ain't gon' smash, but she got her legs up on the dash. Show these haters how to get that work, make that work. 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 Try to write the song, nothing's on the paper. Wish I was a savior like Kendrick, but I'm stuck being a safer suburban. I don't fight anybody like antibody who trying to infect the music, disrespect and abuse it like you fakers. Phonies on the streets, friends who only want beats. I cut them off and now they groveling at my feet. Am I complete? Am I all there? But alone in a room and yet they all stare. Paranoia kicked in soon as I got my first ball hands. Discreet. And just like puberty, I'll never be the same. Seems like nothing's ever really new to me. First day in class, shit, it seemed more like a fucking zoo to me. Seems like these other kids still ain't got a goddamn clue to me. And now they do these rappers, and now the kids grown, and they listen to they slappers, and they get their dicks blown, but they just a bunch of actors. Well, when in Rome, I'm looking for my scene, but it's gone, bitch. When I dash low and it's no cash. Get it in, and you riding no L's, no tags. And she looking like you ain't gon' smash, but she gotta make some noise for Senior Benedict the Moore. Get that work, make that work. 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 Stop.
Ooh, nice reverb.
Play a touch more for me?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
We want to do one more song if it's cool. We don't usually end the show this way. But the events in Ferguson over the last few weeks have left us sort of unable to think about anything else, so we wrote a song about it, which seems, grossly ineffectual, but we're gonna play it anyway. Cumulus clouds sitting up high, shape-shifting, aimless and slow. The breeze is easy, it moves by. Timid, more whisper than blow. Telephone wires, they buzz live. Blackbird is frozen in flight. Low-hanging sun makes an orange sky. Silhouettes in the backlight. Black shingled roofs are all bright trimmed. Trim the same on the windows. 8-year-old girl collar caramel skinned. Pink barrettes and colored pencils. Stares her mouth open and eyes wide as the crowd gathers below. They heard the shouts and they knew why. Grab cell phones, press and record. Blue uniform and a badge on, showing no fear in his eyes. Stands in the street with his gun drawn. Military issue 45. Times have made a choice of what to keep and what to throw away. Everything ingrained comes to a point so sharp could cut a piece a day. And it bleeds on the ground. Keep your knees on the ground where they belong. Keep your knees on the ground where they belong.
But I think that's sort of what gangster rap has always been, right? Mm-hmm. Gangster rap is always, to me, about partying through the horror, you know? I mean, it's... and so these... Oftentimes, like, people will come up to me after shows and talk about, like, you know, how cool it is the way that we're, like, satiring rap tropes or gangster rap music or whatever. And the thing that they're latching onto is like, well, yeah, but this isn't really, you're not condoning this. And it's like, well, I don't know what that means. All we're doing is describing things, and that's actually all that rappers do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's, if you listen to any Scarface album, NWA album, 50 Cent album, right? I mean, like, it's not, nobody who lives in that is unaware of the like real life danger at play, right? When you live in depressed communities and in places that are really violent. No one's unaware of that. No one's unaware that it's unsafe and not a great place to grow up and not a great place to be a child and you know what I'm saying? The job of the music is to like find where you live in that and to party through those things. And so to me, that's sort of what it's always been, and we're not actually doing anything different.
Use is too short, that rocket is taking off. Taking off. Taking off. It's taking off. Party in the sky. Thug Mansion was real as it turns out. These gangsters ride rockets, they taking off. Taking off. Taking off. They taking off.
Okay, I definitely want to do it a couple more times.
Meet up in the parking lot, taking off, spark it up, do that shit again. Taking off, taking off, taking off, it's taking off. Party in the sky, thug man. rocket is taking off. Taking off. Taking off. It's taking off. Party in the sky. Thug mansion was real as it turns out. These gangsters ride rockets. They taking off. Taking off. Taking off. They taking off.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So I'm ready to just try things.
Cool. Excellent. Great.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Clipping, the studio debut from Clipping.
Label debut.
Yeah, the label debut.
The label debut, yes.
We do it the same way
we
we
made
make
both,
everything else.
both records in this studio. We made all our records in this room.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
You're
you.
good. You're good. We missed the exact 10th anniversary by a week or so, but we're very close. And so I just wanted to come together and reflect on this album and just have a conversation about how it feels, what you think of the album, maybe some stories 10 years after it released. I don't know if you had any. I know we did one of these for Mid-City, and that your first reaction was very much like, I needed to go back and remember what was on that album. I know this one is a bit different. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts right off the bat after watching that little clip
This
show?
one's locked in my mind a little better because I really felt like, I'd been doing this other band for like 10, 12 years, 14 years at that point. And I really felt like we emptied the tank on this album. For me, I was like, we have this record deal. I've never had a real record deal before. We have budgets to work with. We have resources. We have like this, people who will let us do any crazy idea we have. Let's do all of them. Because probably what will happen, because we're going to make such a weird record, is that it won't sell and this band will stop, because we still thought of it basically as a side project at that point. And so why not just like go out spending the entire budget, not keeping any of the money, and doing every single like crazy idea that we have, and leave that artifact behind of this crazy time that we were all in a band on Sub Pop.
We really did like that. We said that over and over again while we were recording. Like, don't save any ideas for the next album.
Yeah,
we're putting it all on this record.
And I don't know that it's my favorite, but I'm really, really proud of every moment on that record. Like we overthought every moment on that record in a way that I don't think we have we didn't on Mid-City, and we haven't really since in the same way, because I think the subsequent albums have felt like sort of slices in time in a way that like CLPPNG feels like it felt like a last album.
We definitely were
we
were like, this could be that. There's no planning ahead. This could be the end. This could be it.
Yeah.
Get everything we ever wanted to do out.
Yeah.
And each sort of song is one of those where I'm like, I remember what the kernel of an idea that we're like, we need to do a track that does this was, that we're like, just like, get these out. These are all of our ideas. We may never get to do this again.
There's so many things that are like, that were so hard to do. That children's choir on Dominoes was so much work.
Yeah.
I should say really quickly, just before we keep going, David is coming. He's running a little bit late. I think he's putting his kid to bed, but he should be joining shortly. Some people were worried. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. He did post on Instagram that we were live, but then he went to do some dad stuff. So
my kid
takes priority.
Here I am.
I guess that kind of, yeah, that's interesting. I saw a lot of people were asking a lot of questions, and even I was thinking about like, so 10 years removed from something like this, like you always have that with every project, you have that kind of thing where once it's out, you're like, oh, I would have gone back and like maybe did this a little differently, maybe would have tweaked that. Is there anything on this album that you feel that way about, or was it really just kind of like such a creative impetus that you're like, everything is exactly what it needed to be?
I don't think so. Like this album actually, like this album is like marks the beginning of me not feeling that way about things anymore. Like it's funny how the roles have switched. Like I was used to working on movies and having deadlines. Oh, hey.
Hello.
Hello, friend. I was used to working on movies and having like deadlines and budgets, and you just like turn a crank and music comes out and that deadline approaches, and that's what the thing is that you made. And I remember sort of treating this album that way, like of like really needing for it to be a process moving towards a destination. And I think I mean it was David who like would sort of pause us and say like, wait, this might be the only album we get to do this way. So let's really make sure we're doing absolutely everything the right way. And it's not like we weren't going to have other ideas, or it's not like it wasn't our only thing we were going to make, but like we had this idea, this is a good idea, let's make it the right thing, sort of spare no expense in to the degree that I mean, this wasn't a big budget, but it was like a bigger budget than we'd ever worked with before, any of us.
Yeah.
On anything.
Yeah.
So,
we immediately made Sub Pop buy us a chime tree. That was the first tree we bought.
Oh, man.
Oh, wait. It was a chime tree and a bat detector. And we never used the bat detector. Those were the first. We were like, let's make them buy us a chime tree and a bat detector.
We were like, we signed the contract, and we were like, we think we should put dry ice on a chime tree, and this is it. You're like, you signed this noise rap group. We're gonna buy the dumbest instrument that's ever been made.
First. We were gonna send you this invoice.
First invoice, yeah.
We dry ice on it, and that's Dream.
Yeah, it's in Dream.
It's really hard to put back.
Oh shit. Well,
we broke it. That was the first. Yeah, that's it.
It was our first instrument.
Yeah. First major.
I know you've talked a bit about that before, about just kind of having that budget that was unfamiliar to you at the time and throwing it at whatever sounded like a good idea at the time. I know the example you said before was the children's choir on Dominoes, but was there anything else on the album where you're like, we finally can afford to do this? Like, fuck it, let's try it out.
Never do a children's choir, like just what a disaster.
It worked out, but what an
absolute nightmare. I mean, like the contracting and the legality of like recording with children, and then who are you paying, and the like Taft-Hartley stuff. It was awful.
The Jackie Coogan paper.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legal stuff you have to deal with, but with
children. If we did it now, we have enough friends with kids that we could just do it.
Like,
boy, yeah,
that was dumb.
Those kids are all in their early 20s now, which is insane to me.
I was like, oh, we should probably figure out.
If we could figure out where they were,
if they even remember this. Yeah.
No, because the kids were all they were
pros. Like
they were leaving our session to do an Ida potato commercial.
Yeah. We were
the
a
most
small
polarizing workday they've ever had.
But what else? I mean, the hardest thing, I think the thing we redid the most was Dream, right?
The drums
and Dream were the hardest thing, I think, on the record, because we knew we wanted them playing from a great distance in the woods. Like you were like, half a mile away from the PA that was playing that drum beat. And we dragged a PA out to Joshua Tree to our friend Kid 606's place, and we set it up, 500 feet away from some microphones, and we played that, and it sucked. Then we did it at our other friend's place in Idlewild, like in the hills and then in the mountains. That also sucked. What else did we do?
There were 4 different road trips, each of which were like many hours of driving to the middle of nowhere, and then setting up a PA, and then hiking from the PA to where we sat and recorded it, and then being like, nah, that wasn't that good.
Yeah, I think the recordings we actually used were my car stereo in the Angeles Crest Highway, like not that far away from it. It's just a car stereo, so it doesn't sound very good. And then we also hiked up a hill and used like a portable speaker and a phone to play that beat and re-record it that way too.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
That one, well, and that song also, I don't know, I didn't know, was that in the footage you showed at the beginning of this? The overdubs, the overdubs are recorded on well, his name is Fritz. Fritz is it's a Neumann microphone.
Yeah.
That's looks like a giant dummy head. Well, it looks like a human-sized dummy head, with microphones in its ears, with little rubbery fake ears, and it simulates that head shadow. So if you listen to that song in headphones, it there's the illusion that David is actually whispering in your ears, because it's
me like doing this around.
So David wrapped that whole thing into a microphone that looks like a dummy head, which we had to rent, which I don't think anyone in the world has ever noticed. And that was like, I mean, getting that, it's not like an easy choice to rent this rare, bizarre microphone for this really specific purpose.
Only that we live in LA is there a place that has one for rent, right? That's a weird thing. And I remember we rented it over a weekend really intentionally so that we could get the 1-day price for the 3 days or whatever. Because it's a very expensive microphone.
I feel like I see people using, I don't know about that one specifically, but similar devices for like ASMR content nowadays.
It is.
Yeah. Now it's
exactly what it is.
There's
There's that I forget the name of the company. There's that one that's like basically a sort of a rectangle, like a brick with 2 ears on either side. I haven't heard it and I haven't used it in person, but my feeling is you need the density of the head in between those for it to work.
You need shoulders. It's all the way down to like here.
Were there any things that, like, since you had this budget and you were doing all these more outlandish ideas, was there anything where it was like that didn't quite make it, where you're like, oh, we might not have the money, or it's just not worth it? Or
I mean a lot of those ideas have shown up on subsequent projects, like the idea to run it, right, where like there's a car driving by and beats playing out of the car, and the rapping like syncs up to a beat coming out of a car. I mean, that was an idea we had on Mid City and we didn't quite know how to do it. So like a lot of those kinds of ideas have, I think, shown up later. I mean, Run It really feels like the sequel to Dream to me in that way, just because of how fucking hard it was to get the idea to work.
Yeah.
I think was Run It the working title, because it's Run for Your Life on the album.
Run for Your Life. Run It's
Whoops.
I wasn't gonna say anything. I figured nobody would catch it, but
Run for Your Life is what it's called. That's fine.
I'm an old man with
there isn't another song called Run It. That's true.
Definitely not.
There's no song called Run It. I mean, I used to joke about this with both of them, that like the ideas that at this point I don't really remember the ideas that didn't make it, because one of the things that we will do in the studio is we will yes and each other into such a bad idea that it's impossible, so that we won't do the original idea, because we each tried to top each other with making it more ridiculous. And then once we get to the final form of like what it is, if we can't do it, we just like can't do it. but we can't ever go back. If there were new suggestions to top the previous one, there's no undoing that.
Yeah.
Now there's this one idea that's the only way any of us would be satisfied if it worked. And then as a result, the whole idea is scrapped if we can't possibly manage it, where it's just like the version of it that I think is like using the Grand Canyon as a reverb chamber or something, where we kept joking about larger and larger rooms we could rent out to like use a physical space to try to produce like natural reverberation in. And then now whatever that idea was, if we can't actually do it in the Grand Canyon, it's not worth doing.
Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely how I operated at the time. I feel like maybe I've spent 10 years trying to talk myself out of
We are not like that anymore.
No,
Boy, we will we're more
I mean, I don't know. Like right before this call, we were working on something like not necessarily clipping related, but we were like we were a thing that we do in clipping is like we make a sound and it's looped in a song, and you hear the same thing over and over again from a synth, say, and we almost never, like just take one recording of that and loop it, right? We actually play the MIDI through the synth, and we have our hand on a knob, and it's like slightly different every time. Tape hiss or noise or crackle or something almost never looped, right? It's like actually whole takes. And if it's a mono thing that we're using and we want it to have width and we want it to be stereo, we do it twice and we pan them. And it takes a really long time. And we were doing that an hour ago in this room and still doing that. Like we still work that way, even though it's a very slow and methodical and annoying way to work, right? So a lot of things haven't changed. And I do think, I was thinking about it as we were doing it, as we were sitting, just like waiting for the sort of tape hiss to record for 4 minutes for the third time or something. I was like, do we need to do this, or could I just duplicate it, or could I just cut it or loop it? And I thought it's something about our the mentality or the ethos of no, it needs to be different that sort of trickles through the whole process. And I think it's the thing that actually makes the beats unique and makes the beats work. It's like we can't compromise on that. Like we can't take a shortcut in those moments.
Well, and it seeps its way into everything. Like the writing becomes the same. Like I mean, and the recording process, right? We've never copy and pasted a hook, even if it's me trying to replicate the hook exactly every time. Like and also I'm constantly with this project, like doing little things like changing one word every time a section of a song appears or whatever, just for the same reason, right? It just doesn't feel right if you don't do that. And I don't know really who that's for except us, but yeah.
It's this little, I mean, it's this idea too that you're building a house, or you're building this like sort of larger structure. And if you compromise on the little details on the way up, at a certain point, you've built the house, but you've built this like sort of pile of compromises. And I would like to not do that. I don't know.
You definitely just described what renovating a house is like. Let me tell you. A pile of.
Well, I mean, the thing is like this is not advice. If anyone out there is making music, we made Get Up, and it's an alarm clock, but every single alarm, every time the alarm rings, that is a unique ring. It's not just one recorded once and looped at the appropriate BPM. It's a straight through recording of an alarm clock going off. I mean, it's like
I would set the alarm clock in my booth, which is upstairs, or was upstairs. It's since become a pandemic hoarder closet, but and put a very nicely matched stereo pair on it, and then set the alarm on the alarm clock for like 2 minutes from now, and then run downstairs and hit record and wait. and then it would go, and I'd be like, the imaging is like slightly off.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back and have to do it. I mean, it took like hours to actually get a 3-minute recording. I remember the one compromise I made on that. I was like really like conflicted about it. I was like, well, how does it stop? How does it end? Do I have to sit in the booth for 3 minutes
And
hit the
snooze
button at the right time to stop it? And
while you're counting bars.
I believe I like did a test where I hit the snooze button, like holding my breath and hit the snooze button, and then did a test where I just like cut it at the end and cut in room tone, and I couldn't tell the difference. So the ending is an edit, but the beginning is real. That song was so hard.
It's also not an A. Like that's the note.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. It's a few cents off, so everything is tuned slightly off.
It was such an easy idea, and then I recorded the thing in, and I listened to it, and I tried to write like chords over the top of it, and realized it wasn't in tune. I certainly don't have perfect pitch, and I analyzed it and figured out it was a few cents flat, and so I said, great, an alarm, I'll pitch shift it so that I can write to it with all of these like 440 tuned instruments. And I pitch shifted it like that tiny little amount, and it sounded different. It sounded weird.
It didn't sound like the real alarm. If you had that alarm clock, you would recognize that as being wrong.
Being like slightly digital, like there was just a little bit of artifacts in it, because I didn't want to just time shift it, because that song is 120 BPM, because that alarm is timed to the second, right? And if I just changed the rate of playback, the pitch would have been a perfect A, but the timing wouldn't have quite been 120. And that, like in a song about time, right? Like in a beat about like the regularity of time, it felt wrong to deviate from the second. So anyway,
this is how it works.
So we tuned the whole track down slightly.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting continuity, because I was going back and watching a lot of the, putting together that clip show, a lot of videos and clips and stuff, and I found a few good ones from that tour that you guys did right after the album came out with Bus Driver and Milo. And there's a clip of you talking about like how special it was for, I think it was you, Jonathan, to be on a tour with people that are like doing stuff so in the moment. Like you talked about, I think Kenny Siegel was also on that tour, and he was like writing stuff as the tour was going on and like doing all this stuff live. So I don't know. It just feels like such a throughfare for 10 years later to still have that commitment to putting in the maximum amount of effort.
Kenny's great. Kenny was making new beats in the back seat of the car between tour dates, and then premiering those songs that night.
Yeah, in his sets.
You'd be like, what the hell was that new thing you played tonight, bro? He's like, I made it in the car in like an hour, and it would be brilliant.
I am not that person. I'm trying to be more of that person, but I 10 years later, I'm still not that person. But, yeah.
I wanted to ask, since this was the first big, like, the big label debut, what did that mean for you at the time? Like, what considerations were being put into, like, this is the album that many more people are going to hear, or that we're going to have the budget to do that sort of thing?
Well, I think it's all the eggs in that basket mentality, right? And it's like, I mean, the thing that was sort of amazing and unique about this band, and I feel like Diggs, maybe you and I you and I had spent a lot of time making very different music, but like with the intent of getting commercial success.
Right.
And the weird unlistenable side project is the thing that got not a major label, but a major indie label.
Any label.
Sorry?
Is it any label in my case?
I mean, same. I mean, Captain A Records were on Death by Mark, but like,
which amazing.
But like the idea that the reason that Clipping was on a bigger label suddenly was because entirely we had listened to our ideas that we thought were non-commercial, but were things that we really responded to and really liked, and we have made things that were exactly our taste that we didn't even necessarily understand from the beginning. And so that
Well, and we also were conscious. We were also, I think we were very conscious about what doesn't exist as listeners that we would like to hear more of in the world.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our ideas come from hearing a song and wishing it also had this element in it, or wishing it did this, or wouldn't it be cool if this and that, and realizing that doesn't exist, and then realizing, well, I guess our job is to try to make that thing that we wish this other song did.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lot of those ideas on, well, and this, the album we're talking about, so many of these ideas are like, every song I can tell you like what regional rap subgenre we were addressing. You know, they're very much like, this is this city with this but adapting it with this type of a sound or this process to make the beat. So it's very I mean, it's a little like US tour of regional rap genres, sort of.
Yeah, it was very much, again, like never knowing if we would ever get the chance to do it again. So like it was so much, what's the cool idea we have, or what do we wish existed, because like that we're capable of making. And so yeah, but when I listen to that project, it is like I'm aware of my fandom on it. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much of us sort of trying to figure out how to add to the conversation of a particular subgenre that we love. You know, like every song on that project is like so much about, for me, being like, oh man, I would really love to be on a song like this, you know, and then here's like the clipping version of that song.
No, I think we talked in the last interview about that sort of, that deprioritization nowadays of that specific regional sound. And, you know, you still have it in some places, but to have sort of a love letter, an unspoken love letter in that way to so many things in a style that's like, I don't want to say so far removed, but, you know, experimenting with it in such an interesting way, I think is, I don't know, maybe it's like some level of subconscious appeal, which is why it got as big as it was, where you have all these people recognizing things and like not even realizing it.
As big as it was is a very funny funny way to couch this ultimately very obscure album still in the
I'm not sure big is the word I'd use at all.
Yeah, I don't know because also so many of our fans are so much younger than us too, that I don't know how like regional, you know, it's a very like kind of old man thing, regional rap. Like
every rapper is now just from the internet. Like it doesn't like,
but in the
you
way
don't have
that,
to be from a city to sound like a certain way.
I don't know, in the way that like art works, right? Like nothing comes from nothing, and everything is informed by something. And there's a reason that we loved the things that informed us, and a little bit of that is paid forward into the people who maybe don't know the references that we're very consciously making. But there's something about us communicating why we love this thing that the next person who hears it maybe doesn't love even the same thing, and for the reasons we love it, but they understand the sort of the are passionate about it in some certain way, and it's incredibly hard. You can't control that, right? Like it's incredibly obtuse.
Well, and no one needs to get the
No.
references to listen to the music. That's completely not the point. But also, I think when it came out, there were a lot more people who liked this song and this song and this song, but not that song and not that song on the album.
Oh, yeah.
And when we would talk to like fans, because it was a little more of the time, and the people who did recognize the specific references throughout the tracks were like, this song, I like this song because this is a song referencing the type of rap I already like. I hate this song because this is referencing a type of rap I fucking loathe. So
talk about tonight then. Yeah.
I mean, that was obviously the one.
That's the one that people didn't like.
Everyone hated Tonight.
I love that song.
I do. I've also started getting requests for it. It shows when we finish all the time. At least one person comes up to me afterwards, like, "Why didn't you play Tonight?" I'd be like, "Because apparently everybody hates that song."
Apparently, it's the most hated song by Clipping.
I mean, on a technical level, I'm not quite sure how to auto tune you.
Yeah, that also
with the current live setup we have, but we can figure that out. That's a problem. People do that.
Yeah, it's gonna need a larger.
No matter what, we got to work with Lola, who is like a personal hero, and she became a friend as a result, and she was hella cool, and we love her, and she's gone, but
yeah,
that was an amazing thing to get.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I wanted to.
I mean, so many times in this band, I've gotten to work with people who are like actual heroes of mine, which is crazy. She was one of them for sure.
The features on that record too are like
crazy.
Rose,
yeah. King T and Gangsta Boo are like that's crazy, and Juice, who was like, I mean, you know, if you're not from the Bay Area, you didn't necessarily grow up listening to Juice, but you know, Hunter's Point hero of Bay Area rap.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, man. I was just listening to Bullies with Fullies the other day. I put it on again. That stuff is so good.
Were any of those collaborations things that you had reached out about before you kind of started conceptualizing this album?
No, each one of them was after we made the beat and David wrote one verse and a hook, and we were like, you know who of our sort of dream list of rappers we would like to work with would sound good on this thing we've started, and then we would send it to them, and we got them all back. At least there's no one who said no to us. I mean, it was really those of the sort of established rappers.
There were a couple.
It was
I
can't remember. I guess I can't remember.
It's fine. Those tracks just didn't. Well, actually, and I'm not sure they said no necessarily, but Cake, we actually made tonight.
Cake's the Killer.
We made
Cake's the Killer, yeah.
Cake's the Killer, and then we made. I think because I'm feeling that beat, and so we made the track with Cakes that's on what's it called? Hot Sex, No Love, Hot Fuck,
yeah,
something like that. That's on Wriggle. We made that beat later. And then I don't know, the deadline came up and we hadn't heard, and so we were like, well, that song's not happening, and then it happened later, and then we put it on Wriggle. But Cakes was someone we knew we really wanted to work with, and it just like the timing didn't quite work out, and it happened slightly later.
Forgot about that.
That's the thing too, is that like actually all the songs on the Wriggle EP were made basically at the same time, shortly thereafter. And actually, wasn't Club Down made during the
Club Down?
CLPPNG?
No. Club Down was right after. It was the first thing we made after turning in CLPPNG.
Yeah.
And we did it once at that Red Bull Music Academy show.
We were.
But that was sort of. Yeah, it was like
we turned in this record, and then we were on this high, and we had these other ideas, and we were like, let's make more stuff. We made Club Down, and then we said, let's hold on to this and make a whole horror record, which we did like a millennium later.
But yeah, I guess all of those things, a lot of what with the Wriggle EP was stuff we made in between turning in the first Sub Pop album and it coming out. Because we were just like, what do? We don't stop working. So we just made all those songs. And then like when it came out, we went on tour and we toured we did like a lot of shows for that over those that year. And then we came home and had a couple songs. And, you know, we had those 6 songs or whatever it was.
And we had this relationship with Death by Mark too, with Brian, who we've known for what, 25 years at this point, 24 years, 23 years,
something
like
that,
really close to that.
Has to be. No, we met in 2001. It was our first apartment.
Yeah.
He came to our first
second
apartment. He came to Malcolm? I thought he came to
No. He came to Malcolm. He wrote me, Brian Miller wrote me in 2001 or 2. Heard a track. My first record was on a label called Irritant, UK. And Brian heard it, saw that my contact email was a UCLA email address because we were under LA, and said, if this person's in LA, we should be friends. Sent me an email, and I was like, hey, that's cool. I could use a ride to my show in San Diego, and also you can take my roommate.
And he picked us up.
Yeah. And that's how we met Brian Miller, who runs Death by Mark. So we have a very long relationship with Brian Miller and an understanding, and he didn't put out Mid-City. We put that out ourselves, but he did free PR for it, which is really the reason that anybody heard it.
Yeah.
He sent it to Anthony Fantano. Fantano liked it. And I think that like sort of combination of events is the reason that Sub Pop thought they could do something with this. So we had baked into our Sub Pop contract that Brian got to do an EP, even though we were under contract for Sub Pop. And we said, we're going to make this like really quick, simple, and to the point, no frills, nothing complicated, science fiction concept record for Brian Miller.
It's just going to have
barbershop work.
Yeah, it's gonna have 4 gospel singers.
Yeah. So that took forever, but it was like sort of the concepts were in the works at that time. We made the songs for the real. We kept working. Basically, was the idea. I forget where I was going with this, but
yeah, just those were also part in at least in all of our minds. The things on the Wriggle EP are like the extension of this album.
Yeah.
Because they really were. They were just like, we had to switch gears and make Splendor and Misery, and we hadn't finished clipping part 2.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's what Wriggle EP became, because we made those kind of in the same headspace and in the same methodology.
And they were very separate from what became Splendor and Misery, which was designed to be small and simple and self-contained. I think as a record it kind of is, but as a production that we made, it was incredible.
Very complicated, yeah.
There was another small release that I guess I don't quite understand the timeline for, but is like probably my favorite clipping deep cut, is the Something They Don't Know and Mouth. Where did that come into play in relation to that?
Well,
that's a good question.
I have absolutely no idea when those came out.
Those were just on our Bandcamp.
Those are just on our. So the reason those are on our Bandcamp and didn't come out on Sub Pop is because one of them contains like 30 something samples of other records.
We don't sample things, and if we do, we are very, very explicit about what that sample is. Like Wriggle or Body and Blood.
You're supposed to recognize it.
You know, like what the sample is very integral to what the song is. And so we thought, well, just as an exercise, well, you know what this started is you were like, hey, let's take that Napalm Death 1 second song, You Suffer, and let's use that as the kick drum for a beat, because that's only 1 second long. And it's a good idea, except that it doesn't work.
It just doesn't sound that good. But that was the original idea. That was
And so
absolutely
we're like,
the original.
so let's make a beat that uses that entire song as the kick drum over and over again. And that sort of morphed into like, well, how many samples can we cram into a thing? And it's still really important like what those samples are. But so which song is that? Is that something I don't know?
Something
I don't know.
And it ended up sounding like so much like a kind of Project Blowed thing that we like went and got all the rappers closest to that we could we could muster.
Hellfire.
So that was our sort of like, hey, let's get all of the rappers that we're friends with and get them all on these two tracks.
And there was a contest you guys were running for something they don't know that is still running. Last time I checked, right?
I did say that once, where we would make you a one-off T-shirt if anyone could name every single sample in there. And I haven't checked in on anyone.
My feeling is it hasn't happened, but
my feeling is it hasn't happened because there are two of them in there that I'm just like, if you ever found that, I feel like someone would make a bigger deal out of figuring out. They would, if someone figured out, there are a couple of them where if someone figured out what they were, they would be so damn proud of themselves. They would say something on social media in a way that like would get my attention.
I haven't.
Legitimately,
until you said it, I forgot that.
I totally forgot that.
I remember. I think I emailed.
Know when those came out? Did those came out after
October 2nd, 2014? So like 6 months after.
Right after.
Oh
wow.
Oh yeah, I guess those were like half finished thing. We made those like the week before. They weren't like sitting around from the
yeah. They came
we
out.
made them immediately and put them on Bandcamp because we knew we couldn't. There was no way to clear. There was no way to clear 45 samples or whatever it is.
Well, and Splendor and Misery was like also like pretty much done for a while. I remember the lingering sort of threads on that were like trying to figure out this gospel quartet and the intro.
The intro, took me forever to write that.
Took you forever to write it. Well, and then remember the final recording session for that was because our mutual friend Matt Shackman cast you in a pilot. And was able to somehow finagle you out of Hamilton for one weekend to fly.
That's right.
Shoot this pilot for one day. And we also re-recorded that intro.
Yeah.
Picked it, and then we were done with Splendor and Misery.
That's right. Yeah, because I hated the take of that we had for so long. Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, on my day off, managed to fucking fly to LA, shoot a pilot, and re-record that.
I can remember. I mean, I don't want to throw Shackman under the bus too much, but I can remember having a CD copy of CLPPNG and meeting up with Shackman for some reason because we were working on something and saying like, "I love you. I know you love noise rap," and he said, "I like neither of those words."
I hope someone watching this Googles Matt Shackman and realizes he's like an incredibly successful television director.
Well, yeah, it is
successful.
It is good to note that the contest for something they don't know is still active. If anyone wants to dig, I think
if someone wants to send me like what is the current, because at this point, 8 years ago was the last time I saw a current list of what Reddit had figured out, and it was real close.
I messaged Jonathan about this. I want to say a couple years ago. I think I have like, because it's 2024. I think I had like 20 of the samples, and then I was talking to Jonathan, and he's like, "Oh yeah, and the percussion is also samples." And I'm like, "Okay, now
considering I didn't remember that song existed 10 minutes ago, I would have to like do some digging to figure out how we made that. Yeah.
Oh, I could recognize almost all the samples.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
That's a fun game.
I could do it.
I think you also told me that the T-shirt in question has not actually been. You have no idea.
Never
what that would
made
be.
it.
No.
Well, it's just custom.
We don't know what size they need. Like, look, whoever finds it, they need a specific size. I will make the shirt when I have a size requirement. I'm not going to make one of each size just because that's like.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure it'll happen now. In the next couple of weeks, someone's gonna hit the
Someone's
jackpot.
gonna get all these.
All I got was this double extra large T-shirt because they didn't know what size the winner would be.
So I wanted to get into the actual lyrical content on the album. I wanted to start off with that kind of that 3-song run of Tonight, Dream, and then Get Up, which feels like a very specific like.
Yeah, that's that's how that went.
Proud of ourselves. We thought that was so funny.
Was there any sort of like thought beforehand of like, oh, these songs are going to bridge each other, or was it kind of a happy accident?
No, I don't think so. Right? I think we ended up. It was just, actually choosing an album order is really, really hard for us, and so it was nice to have 3 things that made a lot of sense in a particular order.
The songs were all made individually, and then it occurred to us to put them in that order. It wasn't like we conceived of them all together.
Yeah. Man. Yeah.
I think Dream, I haven't checked in a while. Dream has the most wrong lyrics on Rap Genius of any of our songs.
Somebody's got to fix Rap Genius lyrics because oftentimes I can't find where my lyrics are, and if we decide to add a song into a set, I have to go to Rap Genius to fucking look up my own words, and I'd be knowing that they're wrong, but what other option do I have? I don't have them anymore.
It's very funny that the song that's where you're so close whispering in the ear of the listener is the one that people can't understand.
Apparently,
it's a lot of really obtuse references.
Yeah. It doesn't have a lot of the cues that most rap songs have too. Like
So I know that you've talked at length about the decision not to use any first person language, and so I'm not going to ask about that too generally, but I did want to ask, since this was, as you said, the indie label debut, and it's going to go to at least of a wider audience. How did you give any consideration of like how you would create a band identity while trying to separate yourself from the lyrical content in that way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we I think this project was sort of, we thought we knew how to make clipping songs. We had an idea of what that meant. And so this was just us doing that as many times as possible, I think. Whereas Mid City was a lot of not really knowing what that was yet. I think this one sort of felt like we know what we are. We don't really know what that means. Like, we don't know who it's for or whatever, but like we know how we make songs right now. And so let's just do that.
I think like this is probably unique in our career and lives because just we keep doing this, but I think like probably half the songs on Mid City feel like they could be on CLPPNG to me, like the sort of latter half once we figured it out. And then we just kind of kept that momentum going. And then really Splendor and Misery sort of marks the way we make things now, right? Where we have like sort of an overall concept and we just work within sort of dramaturgical constraints. Because we weren't quite doing that in the same way here. Like every song was its own.
Yeah, this is the last. We haven't really been able to just make a song.
Yeah.
Everything is like it's a puzzle piece within what do you
Puppy Veronica.
All right. But everything else is like this is a puzzle piece in a larger idea. Whereas these were just like, these are songs. Like we can just, whatever we want to make today, whatever we feel like, we can start the song, and like it doesn't have to fulfill this particular function in like,
Yeah.
God damn it. Now I'm thinking about Puppy for Hanukkah. But yeah, honestly, when I pitched the title of this album, it took no one. So we also kept the David doesn't use any first person a secret publicly for a really long time. This album had been out for over a year when I pointed out on Twitter that the reason there aren't I's in the title is because he doesn't say I or me or my or any first person. And, I feel like maybe it wasn't even, maybe, I'm not sure about reviews at the time, but people no review mentioned it. Nobody ever noticed that there wasn't any first person on the album for more than a year after it was out. No one recognized that because we didn't say it in the initial interviews. We kept that a secret because we thought someone would notice, and no one did. And it turns out we we need to be a little more open about how we work. I don't know. Yeah, we don't keep as many secrets as we used to.
I want to say there may have been one forum post or something, because I was looking through your old Facebook posts and I saw a post from like a couple months after the album released where you were like, someone figured it out.
Oh yeah. But they didn't make the connection to the title of the album. I think is what it also was. But zero professional reviews notice. And like, it's not like, I don't know. It's not like they have to. I mean, they're on a deadline. They're professional writers or whatever. But it was just a thing that I thought was clearer than it turns out it is.
Do you feel like these days, since you've grown in popularity, people are combing for those details more immediately and like finding that sort of stuff quicker?
I think doing that on this album has sort of encouraged a certain type of fan interest in us to look for those things. So I think we communicate that there are going to be a bunch of silly, fun little secrets that we put in our albums that we can't help ourselves. Like we can't stop ourselves from doing it. And they're going to be there. And it encourages a type of interaction from the fans that I appreciate, but it's not even like, I don't know. At this point, it's just like, it's not a part of the project, like intentionally. It's just like, that's how our brains work and that's what we do. So
now that, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I feel like the first part of a project always is like throwing things at the wall, and then sort of halfway through you sit back and you look at what you've thrown on the wall and you're like, oh, actually this connects to this and this connects to this and this would connect to this if it had one more song. And so a lot of the ideas, a lot of the sort of like secret connections or little sort of encoded messages are, some of them are intentional from the beginning. None of them have any like necessarily like deep significance, but a lot of them are synchronicities that we just capitalize on too. And I think working that way creates a lot of synchronicities that we actually don't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exciting.
And also, Sub Pop let us do them all on this album too, which I think has encouraged us to continue to do. A lot of the stuff requires like different, things are different based on which version of that album you're listening to, which is like, not really a good, not, and maybe not best business practices. A lot of labels wouldn't let you do that. And so,
yeah, I mean, there's every format is different. And if you bought the CD, there are 3 different CDs you could have bought.
Yeah.
Right. There are 3 different versions of the CD. The only way you can tell is if you look at the catalog number in the like the reflective material on the inside of the CD, there's an A, B, and C at the end of like a 20-digit number.
And that's because of Williams mix, which we haven't talked about.
And ends has different skipping.
Yeah. But I mean, Williams mix is so much a piece about the John Cage piece that we put in it. That was sort of a response to us having done the sort of Steve Reich homage at the end of Mid City. Is like, we need to end a project with a piece of contemporary or experimental sort of new music that we admire, or that was inspirational from us, like a straight up performance of it. Williams mix felt like an obvious choice, because the score for Williams mix, right, is just about the organization of the sounds and not about literally what those sounds are. Those sounds are organized in categories, but it's a way of cutting tape and splicing sounds together from different sort of categories, not about literally what's on the tape. So we spent probably all of an evening trying to figure out a way to make to recreate the Williams mix score ourselves, and then realized that Tom Erb had already done it.
Yeah.
So we sent Tom Erb an email, and he was game to just take our buckets of sounds and run it through his software and generate a bunch of versions of the piece. That's actually something, I mean, I think we have a lot of other versions of it.
They took about to render one took like a couple of hours. So he would just run it.
Yeah,
and we would pick our favorite ones, which is
favorite
why
ones.
there are three different versions. There are three different CD versions. There's the cassette version is different. There's the vinyl version is different. The streaming version is different.
Did we?
So there's
no. Okay, I'm thinking of something else. I was wondering if we had made different streaming versions for different platforms, but I'm thinking of the Wriggle covers, which are different colors for different.
Oh,
platforms.
right, yeah. Colors.
I think there are 5 as far as I'm aware, because I tried to collect them all at some point. And let me tell you, there was a lot of very annoyed Discog sellers when I was like, "Can you send me a picture of the bottom of the CD?"
I'm sorry, but not also not. That's kind of the situation we were hoping to create. Yes. Actually, what that is in, what that references for me, I was thinking about this the other day, is the CD soundtrack from the 90s movie Practical Magic with
the Alan Silvestri score.
Well, Michael Nyman scored that movie, and its score was thrown out, but they had already made the soundtrack CDs. So there's a handful of CDs out there where the last 2 tracks, because it's a compilation album of songs, and the last 2 tracks on some of the CDs out there are by Michael Nyman, who's one of my favorite composers. I also love Alan Silvestri, no question, and I think the score for that movie is pretty exceptional in his career. But it's really hard to find the Michael Nyman ones because they look basically identical. I don't know.
I
was thinking about
very funny.
I was thinking about the like
Very
CDs,
funny.
and that's a whole like category of releases, right? Of like releases that look identical but aren't. And I'm sure there was some of my frustration of like you, Lucas, like emailing eBay sellers and being like, well, okay, but what does it actually say on the inside of the ring?
I don't know. There's a certain fun to the hunt of that you don't get nowadays, where it's like, oh, someone released someone digitally and then they deleted one of the songs, and now you have to like, I don't know, go on SoulSeek and hope that someone uploaded it.
SoulSeek is still incredible, isn't it? Yeah. unsung hero of like, I feel like we're actually like primed for a sort of Library of Alexandria type like purging of information. We're like in the middle of it and we don't really realize it. I feel like places like SoulSeek are like sort of keeping that stuff alive.
Well, yeah, when iMeme went away, all of the like hyphy versus jerk playlists that like thousands of teenagers made in that era.
It's
gone forever.
It's scary because like as those things get more attention from people looking for those safe havens, it like gets also the attention from the people who are there to shut it down. I remember when What CD got shut down like what 6 or 7 years ago, and it's like that's so much stuff that's just never coming back.
Redacted. It's the
Yeah.
it was Oink, it was What CD, and then it's redacted.
Yeah.
No, but this is, I mean, well, the truth of it is you kept texting me over the last week about interviews that you would see references to, but that were gone, like interviews we did in 2014 in as promo for this album are just gone from the internet. And so I had at least 2 of them that I sent you that were in my email because they were like over answering questions over email, that I was able to just search the name of the publication in my email and find, you know, a 10-year-old Q&A we did for various magazines that don't exist online anymore.
It's also kind of insane, and maybe this is a unique period in human history where we just assume that everything we do in our lives is like permanently documented too, right? And then when that turns out not to be true, we're frustrated by it. But
Yeah, I mean, luckily a lot of the stuff that, or well, you know, a majority of the stuff that was down, I could find again, you know, using like Internet Archive. But some stuff, it's like, especially the smaller music blogs and stuff like that, it's just, you know, they never got archived.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they're down, they're gone forever. Yeah, definitely kind of a weird humbling moment researching stuff and being like, because 10 years ago, it doesn't feel like that long. So for it to be like gone forever. Yeah.
The internet feels permanent, but it's really, really, really not. Yeah. There was that incredible like deep dive article about Scarecrow Video in Seattle. Like just like looking at numbers of like how many movies are available on all streaming services currently, and how many titles were at like an average Blockbuster Video. How many titles does Scarecrow have in stock? And there, I mean, so many, because it happens all the time, right? That like a company buys the rights to a bunch of things, and then they go out of business, and all of those titles disappear from streaming. Whereas in the sort of video store days, those copies would still stay there, even though the company's gone.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not nostalgic for the past really in any way. I feel like that's difficult. That's treacherous too. But like, this idea that we live in a world in which nothing is lost anymore, I think is flawed, and we will.
Well, what I will say is, having then dredged up the things you were looking for, Lucas, I don't think they were the missing key to anyone's understanding. So I reread those interviews you asked for. It was like, whew, we said it. I don't know if it's smart.
You can't unsay it.
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, I guess that makes sense for a band that is doing their kind of first press tour in that way, but a lot of interviewers are asking very similar questions.
That still happens.
Yeah.
That's just what doing interviews is like.
The most entertaining, at least, was the one on a French radio station. I can't quite remember the name of it, but I think it was like the first Europe tour y'all had done, and it was a French radio station where they had a translator there to translate all the questions, and watching you three sit there like waiting for them to start speaking English. I think that the actual amount of time you were talking is maybe like 1 to 2 minutes, and it's like a 25-minute interview.
My God. It's just a translator talking back and forth to himself over and over.
Yeah.
My God, I have no memory of that, but it was awful.
Well, I got a bunch of, I was mainly focused on interviews, and I found a bunch of them, so I'm hoping to archive them in some way, because it seems they're disappearing.
You're not going to put us on the spot and say, do you still believe this idiotic thing you said?
Some things it's okay.
That's what I was afraid of when I kept sending you those things. I was like, God, I don't think that's true at all.
Man, yeah, I kind of think every interview I've ever done should disappear moments after I've done it.
I was amazed to see the Lawrence, Kansas footage in your.
Yeah.
That one is still up on YouTube. Yeah, that was quite a good interview.
Crazy.
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, where am I? Oh, I wanted to talk about one of the kind of, it feels like the big hits for CLPPNG was Body and Blood, and a theme that y'all keep going back to is this like visceral female violence. And I was wondering if you could talk about like, I don't know, what your inspirations for writing those songs are, and if you feel like you notice any difference in how the audience receives stories like that.
Yeah, I think Body and Blood definitely started sort of a thing that like appears on most of the albums now, I guess, where there's at least one song with like a specifically female protagonist. All the songs are pretty violent, but there usually has continued to be one with like a specifically female protagonist who is like the hero of the song and is wielding the violence. And like I think on CLPPNG it was mostly just about, again, like looking for things that we wish we had heard more of in music, and like the sort of and I wonder if it came after working with Gangsta Boo and thinking about that too, about how sort of few like hyper violent female protagonists play songs.
That song was really early.
It was really early. What it was it was also an inside. It was sort of an inside joke between us about that. Was it a
Independent Woman?
Yeah, was there? There was a there was a whole rash of these. There was a
that Bootsy Webby song, right?
Was it Boosie and Fox or Boosie Webby?
Webby, INDEPENDENT. She got her own house. That's literally where that comes from.
For hours. Just the whole song is Boosie just saying fucking letters.
Great song. Great song, but the definition of independent woman is she got her own house, she got her own job, right? Like, and so yeah, that's right.
It became like a joke of like the degree to which like the measure of independence in that song was such a low bar that we started joking about like a serial killer, a woman serial killer, and how, and I mean, you know, that's also sort of a joke about like, you know, right, women serial killers being like that. They're they're underrepresented in this category. Like real, what 9 out of no 99 out of 100 serial killers are male. So like women up in this category. Yeah. So I mean, that's
right. There was like, and I love that song, but there was something about that song that like these two guys sort of praising the independence of this woman, where like the bar for independence was so low. So I like, well, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna praise like let's raise the bar a little bit. Like I'm gonna, you know, like
what was that? There was a Neo song, Miss Independent.
I'm just trying to find a way to describe this girl without being disrespectful.
But that's that was an Akon song. I think that we all it was like
all around the same time.
I'm trying to find a way to describe this this girl without being disrespectful after calling her a whore. He was like, I think of a word for woman that isn't disrespectful.
Incredible.
It is funny that like even in, well, I think they would like to think even in a more like diverse audience that you have, sorry, how do I word this? Even like 10 years after this album, where you would think that people's thoughts about this sort of thing are, you know, getting better, I still see that like every time you guys release a song that is about that female violence, it's people trying to link it back and being like, is this the same character from Body and Blood? And like trying to make it so singular. And I don't know, that feels very representative of what you're talking about, of having these sort of things underrepresented and wanting to like do more of it, do the things you're missing.
I mean, I think if it is for you that's true in our world, I think that's the way we've learned to make things too, is that like, you know, we all have like three very different ideas. I know this is about CLPPNG, but I keep talking about Splendor and Misery, but like the three of us have different, or at least did at the time, I'm not sure I remember now, but like we have different ideas about what happens on that record. Like what are the events that led to the things that we documented on that record in the sort of like story of it. We believe different things, and we sort of operate all three of those takes on the thing we're making. They're all true. And so like we have to then say, well, like everything that every connection a fan makes, if that's just also canon, that's interesting, right? If that's true, then that's interesting. I mean, I don't know, I relate it to comic books a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I also do agree that it's because those songs stand out, because if we make, multiple albums that are like very overtly about murder or various monsters, the one per album or one or two per album that happen to be women monsters, everyone assumes that those are the same people, those are all the same person, that it's all just Cynthia, right?
It's become Cynthia.
The fans have decided that's Cynthia.
And often the monsters are gender fluid. There's songs where I shift pronouns throughout just to
But I think rather than responding to like a fan theory like that and saying like
no, it's wrong, no, never.
We're not the sort of people that would do that. We just say, oh, that's an interesting take on this thing that we've made, and how can we make a new thing that both supports and contradicts that at the same time? Right?
Yeah, but I will say that Body and Blood and Story 7 we're not in our mind about the same person, and if they are fans, that was news to us, and that's available as a reading, and that's interesting and fine, but it was definitely not anything we thought of. We never.
I'm always pretty appreciative of the fans who try to link the story songs to songs that are not the story songs, because like it's all I can do to barely hold those story songs together. So like when bringing in other things from the canon, I'm always like, oh yeah, that's cool. I need to use that to help me out the next time we write one of these.
And speaking of all this, I remember in the press I think about this sometimes. In the press for this album, we did an interview with a writer. It was a woman writer, and she pointed out that we had two women rappers on this album, and asked if that was like a political choice. And I remember, because we were a little more oblique at the time, we were like, no, we just made those songs and they were the right people for them, and people can think whatever they think. And I always think about this where I'm like, why did we lie when we answered that question? No, it was absolutely a political choice to have women rappers in 2014, before fucking women rappers were the dominant form of rap music in the world. Like, we absolutely, that was politics. Like, we didn't not think of that. Like, we absolutely knew, but we definitely, that comes up in my head every once in a while. I'm like, oh, we denied it at the time. And she was kind of disappointed that we were like, no, not at all. No. It's just like, that's the song we made. And I think we were trying to be like cool about it. We were like, we made these songs and picked the right rapper for them, which is true, but we also made the songs
for those
women. We were like, we don't want the gender imbalance of our album to be so insanely out of whack that there are 0 women fans on this thing, because we also are like huge fans of these particular rappers, and also just like women in rap at a time when there was really just maybe Nicki Minaj, and that's it. But even then, like, she was pretty new, and now the world is very different. And we did that.
They own their own home.
If we're talking about secrets and fan theories and stuff like that, and you're talking about hiding stuff on the album, and I'm wondering, now that we're 10 years out from CLPPNG, is there anything that you put on that album that people have not picked up on yet that you'd like to reveal?
Well, I mentioned when Steve Albini died, no one had ever found that the intro song contains a quote from the very first track on the very first album on Sub Pop. So Sub Pop 100 was the first official release on Sub Pop Records, and the first track on it is called Steve Albini Spoken Word Thing, and it's he screams, "The spoken word is weak."
Weak, yeah.
Through a bunch of feedback, and it's like 20 seconds long. But so that the opening of that track of our album on Sub Pop contained a tribute to the very first ever song released on Sub Pop Records,
and that's why it's like guitar amp feedback as well.
There was sort of the whole idea of that. Yeah. So it was a tribute to that. Not Bruce Pavitt and Jonathan Poneman. I told them personally like what that was, and they both were like, "Huh. Oh yeah, Steve. Yeah, we asked Steve to do this thing. I forgot about that." Like,
yeah, they had no recollection.
Not recognizing it, but that's the only. I tweeted about that when Albini died, but that's the only. I don't think we've ever told anyone.
No,
Lucas, you would know have I said that before? Did you know that?
I mean, other than you tweeting about it, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I tweeted about it like years ago and forgot.
That's a really good analogy. I mean, like that was us sort of figuring out that like the associations we were making and the things that were really important to us that felt like hugely revelatory. Like we made that and we thought, oh, this is such a troll on Sub Pop. They're gonna think this is so funny.
They're gonna love it. Yeah,
they didn't even know this. The thing that you did, that they did ages ago, and we sort of learned that we're like, oh, actually, what's important is that it's meaningful to us, right? And those connections are really, really meaningful to us, and being that specific.
Yeah, I mean,
whether that translates or not is kind of irrelevant.
It doesn't matter.
Right?
But we did with that. That is a very specific. We made that intro that way because we were really excited that we were on this legendary record label.
Yeah.
And this was this oblique tribute to their history that when I mentioned it, when I told Bruce and Jonathan about it, they had vague memories that song existed. So it worked. I mean, they were pleased.
The things that trickle down and that retain meaning for the people who weren't there when they're being made, like that's out of your control.
Yeah, but also like those, having those lines, having to write around and towards those lines are what made that intro what it is. I love, and that verse is really good. But it doesn't matter where that stuff comes from.
And constraints,
like it would have been a very different thing had we not decided to do that. So,
I mean, the only other I'm trying to look at like other references on the album.
Remember we did that radio show at KXLU where we were going to play all of the inspirational tracks for each track on the album sort of in order, and we made it like three. So we had this like giant playlist, songs in, and they're like 3 hours.
Oh yeah. Like we had for each track on the album because we were supposed to play the album in order, and so each track would be preceded by 3 songs that inspired the song. So it would be like 3 songs and then our song, and then the next 3 songs, and then the next. And we got 3 songs into it
3 songs
before they were like, "Show's over. Next DJs coming in right now. Goodbye."
Do you still have that playlist written down somewhere? I feel like that would be really interesting for a lot of people.
Potentially,
it's possible. I could also probably just think of what it was. Honestly,
I potentially do. I'm gonna step away and run to the restroom.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Right.
I feel like that may have been one of the radio interviews that I messaged you about, Bill, because that was one of the things. Like some of the online interviews, they were hard to find because the blogs are down. But anything on the radio is like gone.
Oh, I don't think KXLU tapes anything. I think it just goes straight out and is unless the DJ themselves is recording. It's just gone forever. Our first radio interview was the college station at UCLA, which as someone who went to UCLA for 13 years, I never knew existed until we were on the station. It was like in Ackerman, like it was like a little room in Ackerman, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's only like it's only online. It's not a real radio station." And I had gone to that school for 3 degrees. It's like, what? There's a college station here? And no one's ever heard that. I mean, I think it was just online at the time. No one recorded it. You asked for Lucas. You asked for if I had a link to what was it? Berkeley
Free Liberation Radio, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, do you remember that? That was the pirate radio station in West.
Yo, yeah.
That was the pirate radio station in West Oakland that we did that interview with. So no one was recording that, and it was only probably audible for like 75 feet outside of the building.
Outside of the building, yeah.
I think it's streamed online, but it was like it's a pirate radio station, and that was the one where Christian SB the Moore was like, he tweeted during it, he was like, which member of Clipping says the word fascinating the most? Apparently we all kept using that as an adjective to describe something or other, and he was he thought we were
that was, oh yeah. I mean, I remember being up in that room, just like the attic of a house in West Oakland, right? Like
basically it was on a corner of like, yeah, anyway, it was right by the bus
it was right by the West Oakland BART station, across the street from the post office. Yeah.
So there's plenty of stuff we just don't. There's like no hope of ever finding, and it's for the best, I think. This is gonna delete right after we're done, right?
Yeah,
This is never
course, sure, yeah. I wanted to also go back. You were talking about your different approaches and how you said, maybe I misunderstood, but you said Splendor and Misery was kind of the first album that you established how you've made all your albums since then.
Kind of, yeah.
A few of the interviews that I read about CLPPNG said that this album was similar to Mid-City in the way that it was kind of a collection of singles, as opposed to an overarching narrative. And I was wondering just how approaching those two different ways to make an album are like different. Did you approach There Existed an Addiction to Blood and Visions of Bodies Being Burned more as singles, or also as an overarching story, even though they're like self-contained in each song?
I think both of those. Sorry, go ahead, Teddy.
No, yeah, not an overarching story, but theming. So like there was still like the difference with CLPPNG is there's not like a bucket or category that like we're feeding into. These are just songs. And we kind of haven't done that since, which I assume means it's because it's easier for us to not do that. Yeah, sometimes like the more constraints, the better. And it takes us forever to finish anything anyway. So I think the more opportunities you have to focus the idea down a little bit, maybe the better. And so, yeah, pretty much, Splendor and Misery was like a one through story told through the music. We haven't really done that again either, but oh, you guys are making me jealous. I might go get myself a beer. But yeah, pretty much everything we've done after Splendor and Misery has had like
it became hybrids almost, because Splendor and Misery is about two characters, and every song is like in an order about a particular narrative. And then the horror records are like, there are through lines and multiple characters, but it's more of these songs can stand on their own, but they can only go on these albums. We couldn't move one to another album. Oh, all right. Is he kidding? He's kidding.
It'd be fun to do that again, to like create a true certain narrative. But...
Yes, it will. Yeah, but it would also be interesting to just
make songs.
We have not done that. I don't know if we what would it take for us to just like make songs the way that we did on that on this album again, because so much of like our conversations are like, what is this song about? And we kind of need like something guiding us. It's amazing to me how we managed to make Mid City and CLPPNG without some sort of overarching guiding principle, except that like the overarching guiding principle was these are going to be clipping songs, and so we didn't really know who clipping. We were like still building what clipping was and what a clipping song was. So that was the theming. I mean, it was almost like the concept of those albums were these are albums by clipping before we knew what clipping was. So it was about building who that is.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the audience and the kind of scene that you were making this music in and for. I feel like a lot of the interviews and, well, sorry, more accurate, the reviews of CLPPNG that I was looking at in preparation for this were, you know, it was like the Dead End Hip Hop video that I showed in the intro for this, where it's people.
That was super funny.
That whole video is fantastic. I recommend watching the whole thing. But one of the parts that I cut out was, you know, different members of that panel kind of disagreeing about what elements they were interested in. Like some of them were talking about how the hip hop elements that are what really drew them in, and it was the noise elements that were challenging them. Or with some of them, it was those noisier elements that were bringing them in, but the hip hop elements that were challenging them. And I feel I see that sort of sentiment echoed a lot in the reviews, and the audience reaction for this is like, because it's something that they haven't necessarily heard much before, it's polarizing. So do you ever get that sense of like that you're making like outsider music for an insider circle, or like that?
That was definitely the feeling, like the very beginning, right? Because like it was the first project. We talk about this a lot, right? That it was the first thing that we made that our friends didn't like. Like usually like that our friends couldn't really even be polite about, right? You make music and you show it to your friends and they're like, "Wow, what a great thing you made," even when they don't mean it. I mean, that's polite, you know? And I really remember playing these songs for people. Do you remember you and I, we had seen that play at the Dahlia, and then you and I were in this room.
I brought
Mike Durst and Ross Goldman, which is fun for a variety of reasons. Ross Goldman were in this room, and we were just like chatting and like having beers, and we were like, "Hey, we have this new thing," and we played them like loud and guns up and bullshit or something, like the very first clipping songs. And they were just like they couldn't respond to it. Like it wasn't even like a "hey, good for you" kind of thing. Like I remember watching those two guys who are good friends and wonderful, lovely people and are supporters of this band, like not know how to process what they had just heard. And I was kind of like, wait, we might be on something here. We might have like hit a thing that like actually people don't know how to respond to in a way that is interesting, right? Like, I don't know.
But I also think there's a sense that I get from, look, there are more experimental rap projects now than there were then. And there is more of a sort of a language to what experimental rap, what is allowed and not allowed in experimental rap, and what experimental rap sounds like. And at that time, we had no idea. There were no rules. We didn't know what we were doing. We were trying to build something, and we were building things out of references in other music and smashing them together. And as a result, some of those things, like you go back and there are not new experimental rap songs that sound like some of the things we tried, right? I mean, I think that part of why, you know, Tonight was the song that other rappers that we played it for really liked, but the reviewers and the people who really liked us fucking hated. And it was funny because it was also like a time that was a like a nadir of like post T-Pain, post Lil Wayne using auto-tune before Future. So it was that was right after Jay-Z said auto-tune is dead, and then we made this song at the bottom of everyone saying, you know, this technology is stupid and bad and we hate it. And so everyone was like, I can't believe these guys did this. Like, they've betrayed us. They've betrayed our fandom by doing a song containing autotune, because that is the thing that we have banded together and decided we hated. And after that, then you get Future and Young Thug and everything great after that. So we really just hit the sweet spot of that being the worst choice we could have made for a certain amount, like a certain group of fans. But yeah, so that's what it like. There wasn't a coherent vision of what we didn't know what the type of music we made necessarily. We were like figuring out what we sound like. And I think the entire sort of experimental rap world that exists now didn't have the sort of formed like what sounds are allowed and what sounds are not allowed. So there really is that sense that like, oh, the rappers liked Tonight because it sounded the most like a type of rap music they listened to, and they didn't like the noisier elements. And then the people who were listening to us because they didn't really like contemporary rap at the time liked the noisier elements, but when we pulled in things from radio rap at the time, that was a betrayal, right? That was the thing they didn't like.
But at the same time, like I remember also too, like we really were in our own heads about like we were making something that like, you know, rappers wouldn't know how to deal with. And when we were starting to reach out for features, we were like, do we need to make drums that feel this way so that they can listen to the drums and feel the spine of this song, and then they'll do the thing and then we'll take the drums away? And we didn't at all. I think it was actually working with Lola, with Gangsta Boo, that really reinforced that to us, because we played her a bunch of stuff and she didn't even need a click, right? She didn't need anything. She was just like, oh, I get it. I get how this works. And so when we sent the track to Juice, I remember that was the one that we were particularly or Die is like, because that's really just like, it's a lot of radio tuning and it's really like, it's rhythmic, but there's not drums. But he just latched onto it and didn't need a click.
Yeah, we actually,
it was just like, oh,
we made a version. Rap song. We made a version with drums in case he was going to ask for it, in case he responded and was like, what the hell is this?
And some of those are left in the hook, actually, in Or Die. There's like an 808 like hi-hat and snare left in the hook. But
yeah, I was even surprised by that. You know, rapping is a skill set, and like if you can do it, and if you've spent your whole life doing it, you can do it. You know, like so like it shouldn't be surprising. But the in particular the way Juice raps, which is always so around the beat. Like, you know, the beat is providing the necessary information to understand, because he's like slowing down and speeding up, and like the overdubs are coming from all over the place and stuff. And so he's always rapped like that. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if this is going to work for him. And he had zero problems with it because he's a great rapper.
There was sort of a reality check at that point of like, we think we're doing this incredibly revolutionary thing that people can't latch onto, and then all of these rappers were like, yep, I get it, here we go, no problems.
I think one of the really interesting things reading about the reaction from people when it came out, you know, because of that sort of that polarization of what this album is classified like on paper, is the reactions that it pulled in from communities outside of those. Like, I found a Reddit post from shortly after the album came out where someone had posted story 2 on the math rock subreddit. and all the comments are positive. People are like, "This is in 7. This is fucking awesome. I love this."
Every time signature.
Yeah, and I guess I found that interesting that it's like what someone within those communities that the album is classified in can see as, I don't know, as like pushing them away is what brings people outside of those communities into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every piece of music or whatever has as many points of entry probably as the people who made it, and so like if we are also like really mathy, so yeah, so that's another point of entry to this music. But I think it's rap music specifically gets sort of spoken about with a lot of less and less now, but certainly at that time, like there were so many sort of cultural boundaries around it. And so, yeah, so those things weren't ever even considered in the speaking about the music, right? Whereas, we obviously come at this from a bunch of different disciplines and a bunch of, we didn't all only make rap music.
Yeah. I mean, and we also, that was another thing that we were also, I think, after Mid City, and I think on this record specifically, a lot of those like auto-tune, like some more like overt rap references were us pushing back against the availability that we saw, like certain people who were like, oh, we hate rap, but we like them. And we didn't really want to make that a thing where we were this exception. We wanted to make it clear that we love rap and that we are not fixing rap and that we are not rap for people who don't like rap, right? Because that was, I remember being a little bit nervous about that assumption being made based on how Mid City sounded at the time. There was this assumption that we were anti-rap and that we had made something so different because we hated rap. And I think a lot of the references on this record are a reaction formation against anyone thinking we were trying to destroy rap. So like the more overt, like this is a rap reference that we, this is evidence that we love what we're doing and we love this genre and we are, just trying to participate in the way we can. We are not trying to fix anything, and we don't hate rap. Is maybe why it's so there are so many specific rap references that maybe jarred some people, but
and I think again probably like is a lot to do with also sort of the world that we grew up in, where like when we were growing up, there was a sense that like the underground was very definitively like anti-pop. It was like it was the kind of rap music that backpackers were making like was in opposition to the stuff you heard on the radio. And we started making this stuff after all of that. Like when I was a kid, I was like, I had my backpack straps on real tight, and then I, over time, like grew to love all of the stuff that I sort of like had dismissed as when I was much younger. And so I think by the time we were making this music, it was also really important to us to not fall into the category of music that we would have been placed in automatically, right? When those divisions existed in a much more like strict dichotomy for rappers, at least.
There's some audience questions that I wanted to get into, but before we do that,
right. There's an audience.
Before I do that, the final questions that I had were about some of the lyrical content on CLPPNG, and I wanted to thank my boyfriend Caroline for helping me with these questions because he's much better at analyzing themes than I am. So I am giving him credit for these. But the first one, talking about There are songs on there like Taking Off and Tonight, and they both have this like really intense through line of like the feelings of like undesirability or like feeling left behind. And I was wondering if that was any sort of like conscious or subconscious effort going into this album that you knew was going to a wider audience and like hoping for some sort of reaction, or if you were conscious of those themes at all.
That's interesting. I mean, I think I don't know. It's hard to remember what I was conscious of or not at that time, but I think the sort of press release about us that was written at that time that like doesn't really apply anymore, but that like still comes up a lot about like the club you didn't want to go to or whatever, like that was that Bill wrote, but like it was very true about that record, and so I think a lot of the atmosphere about that record was about like what is the most unappealing party, like party or party goers, like what's the sort of or like what is actually here when you remove sort of the gloss and the alcohol and the everything, when the lights come on at the club, where are you actually kind of idea. And so I think that's why probably those themes appear a lot on there, because that was sort of part of the assignment. It was like, how do we keep this as club music, but also make it like kind of unappealing,
or address the unappealing parts.
Right? Yeah. Not pretend that it's also not fucking scary in a nightclub.
I draw a line between Tonight and Enlacing. Also, like I feel like
absolutely.
And they would go well together.
Well, just like you would draw a line from T-Pain to Post Malone.
Yeah,
that's that's how it works.
One of the other themes on there that was very interesting was this kind of like this depiction of really like casual death and decay, and how that is just like existing as part of the world, like especially in like work in summertime, where they don't necessarily feel like the focus of the song, they're just existing there. And especially, going back and watching that Knees on the Ground performance at Afropunk, and then listening to that song again, and then listening to Chapter 319, which 7 or 8 years after that, and just kind of how different it feels from this cry of visibility with Knees on the Ground to like this sense of exhaustion that you get from Chapter 319, almost, where it feels like the middle of a story, it's not the beginning or the end. And I wonder reflecting on it in the time that it came out, how do you feel about that and like its continued relevance with these continuing protests about these kind of things, like the Black Lives Matter protests and the Palestine protests? And
I mean, when we put Chapter 319 out and we re-released Knees on the Ground, it was like sort of specifically to be like, it's the same song. We wrote the same song again, and we could write the same song every year. We could write the same song every day. So it's sad, and it is exhausting. I think it's why, protest movements are youth-led movements, right? Because we've been saying it for so long that we're exhausted, and that's shitty, but that's also like part of the plan, so those songs make me really sad. I mean, that was the idea. They're very sad songs. But they're they were also, for us, our hand was forced. That's not like we weren't making, this isn't a band that makes protest music, so like that wasn't the idea. But we were in a moment where artists had to say something about
Well, Knees on the Ground was really like not calculated, right? Like we all, and we were trying to work on
air them out.
Party songs.
We were trying to write air them out.
Trying to air them out. That's right.
That's why I was just looking at when Knees on the Ground came out.
Yeah,
it's when we were making Splendor and Misery, because whenever it was posted, it was the day we were supposed to finish air them out.
And I feel like we made that song in one night and just like uploaded to SoundCloud.
Yeah,
because we didn't know what else to do. And I remember, I mean, that was such a like, we were still operating so conceptually. I remember we needed, but I think of Knees on the Ground too, like outside of its political statement, like aesthetically, that was sort of a moment where we were like, oh, we want that middle verse to exist inside the time that it's to travel from a gun to reach its victim, and slowing down time and thinking dramaturgically about how like a song can work. That feels like a turning point in what clipping was doing, and it's a very theater idea. I mean, I think that leans into the fact that we all three come from theater backgrounds, but like, I feel like that kind of like talking and how our songs work is pretty commonplace. Not that we've done that literal thing anymore, but that was a very, I think of that as sort of a turning point of like linking our careers and our studies to this music thing that we were doing.
Yeah, and in the same way that is also the like, it did that about like all of our training and our upbringing and who we are outside of the band, but it also was bringing, that was the moment we brought everything of ourselves into the band, because there had, you know, when clipping was a more of a side project, we did have this sense that, well, it's not us.
Yeah.
So clipping as a project is representative. It doesn't do analysis for you, right? It just shows sort of snapshots, and because we had been in our various underground musics where mostly we were playing for people who knew us personally, right? They knew us personally. They knew our politics personally. That we didn't have to make music about our politics because only our friends were hearing it. And then Knees on the Ground, I think, was the first time we realized maybe we've done 2 albums now. This is actually more of a career than we had anticipated. It's not a side project. It's the main focus of our artistic activities. And we should, and if it's going to be the repository of us as people, we need to expand that to include our personal politics and the other stuff we care about in the world. And I remember like we wrote like there was like a disclaimer on that song before it came out that was like, hey, we don't usually do this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We have this sort of distanced thing that we've been cultivating, right? That you don't hear from us. We're not people.
While we were working on an album about a slave ship.
I know.
Right,
Yeah,
but that was more of our method of.
No, totally. But it's interesting in hindsight that like.
Yeah.
Well, and that was really the revelation. It actually, I'm not sure it changed the way that we made things. It just actually revealed the whole time we'd been making really personal things in the project that had this veneer of impersonality to it, right? Like that we were trying to make this incredibly presentational project that was divorced from the self. We weren't using first person. The original version of the live setup of this show would be behind the table and incredibly bright work lights like flashing synchronized on beats in the audience's eyes so that they couldn't see us at all.
Yeah.
We filled the room.
The first time we played live,
like
Jonathan and I were at a table in the front. There were lights on the front of our table blasting in the audience's eyes, and David was behind us, rapping without moving, looking down. And
we were like, we're making this incredible, we're like trying to remove the self from this. Like we did it so hard that we came back around the other side and made the most personal things that any of us have made. But and I actually, I mean, I actually do really think that Knees on the Ground is a turning point in that regard too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think in terms of because you also showed that clip I caught from us performing it, and that also, our live show now, I used to wear those dark glasses all the time too, and this was another like way of just like step of removal. And like the show now is very much, it's so different from the albums, which is why it's also funny to like talk about. The second we finish an album, that thing is frozen, and the versions that we perform live to me are completely different songs, sometimes with different words, because I don't remember the real ones. But like that performing that song and feeling what that felt like was sort of a beginning of saying, oh, this is actually about when we are here, it's about us, so actually I have to be more myself for these shows, not less. And that's still the thing I think about as we try to, we start playing bigger and bigger venues or whatever, and how are we going to expand the show, and how are we going to, but then like, what are the things that are actually still personal? Because there is something, it's difficult music in some ways, and it doesn't necessarily lend itself to like a lot of the things that you would do in a stadium show, or even an arena show, the kind of like that kind of separation, which is just because somebody is so big or so famous or so like, like the way that we perform is this very sort of personal, we're all in this together, very like theater kid thing.
Well, it was very funny. It was very funny to me when we played Oblivion Access in Austin last summer, that it was Stereo Gum. It was like Stereo Gum sponsored the fest, and Stereo Gum had been really like supportive of us from day one. So Tom Bryant, who was like one of the first hip hop writers for Pitchfork. He was like original, that blog generation of writers, and he wrote about we were album of the week for this album on Stereo Gum, and he was he's always been supportive. And then it was the first time, last summer was the first time he'd ever seen us live, and the write-up of it was like, wait a minute, the show is fun. I really ever heard the album. And it's like more than 10 years later, and he's like, whoa, this like their concerts are a party. Like I thought this was going to be miserable. Which is very funny, because we like well, for 10 years now, that's been the sort of difference, is like we'll make the song can be miserable, but it better go live.
Well, it's like you always used to say, I mean, this resonated with me a lot. Debbie, you're talking about gangster rap, and the phrase you used was "party through the pain," right? That it's about like creating like a fun time out of misery is like sort of the purpose of the music a lot of times.
The purpose of a lot of music.
Yeah.
Music, like across all cultures and times.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because I think I see that a lot managing the fan communities with people who have listened to your music for so long and have these perception of your personality and who you are as people through this like largely intense and scary music, and they'll like be about to go to a concert for the first time and ask like, am I allowed to talk to them, or will they get mad at me? And so seeing that,
yes.
Yeah. Seeing that
a little time,
that that dichotomy kind of reflected in the music and the mood of it too is really interesting. I'm gonna move on to some audience questions. I think
They're asking for when the next album comes out. Don't ask us.
We don't.
Well, that gets rid of 75% of them. Yeah.
You don't say anything.
Yeah. No, don't go back. Don't go back
yeah.
and look for places we accidentally said things.
We accidentally said you mean.
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask about, since we're talking about CLPPNG, is the incredible cover art, which I feel like is so iconic and so closely associated with the band. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that image is from this artist Tim Lahan from this zine he did called Olympic Fencing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
How are you exposed to that, and like where did the decision come from to use that?
I wasn't. So what happened was I pitched the idea of the artwork, and we were working with Dusty at Sub Pop,
who we worked with on all of our records.
Yeah, who we continue to work with.
Yeah, Dusty's cool.
We're working with him now. Dusty's great, but
on a record that we don't know whether or not it's. I mean,
you gotta
theoretically we're working with him now. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, but I had pitched this idea of exactly that of a broken chain link fence as this sort of flat grid, and he came back with these designs that he did not mention to me that he had commissioned them from an illustrator. And then my roommate at the time, Charlie came home from what is that? The Zine Fest at the LA Book Fair at Mocha. And he was like, "Hey, look at this cool zine I got. It looks like your album cover." And it was literally, it didn't look like it. It was
it was in fact
our album cover in a zine. And I was like, "Oh no, we stole this artwork." And so I sent it to Sub Pop, and they were like, "Yeah, that's who we commissioned. We called that guy. Like, we paid him." And I was like, "Oh,
thank God.
Oh, thank God." But it was entirely like we didn't see the artwork and decide we wanted to make that. That was the premise. We were like, I want this to look like this.
It was an idea, and then the artwork already existed that was exactly that idea, and we didn't know about that. Sent it to us as if it was a realization of our idea, which it was not, right?
It was the guy. They found the guy who already made it.
I talk about capitalizing on synchronicities, and that's sort of a version of that happening, like unbeknownst to us.
Yeah,
perfect, and it's beautiful, and Tim's work is incredible.
I literally just like when I was looking for those images for you, Lucas. I found the emails to Tim where I wrote to him cold out of nowhere and was like, "Oh my God, I thought we somehow stole your artwork."
Yeah, I did
because I just got showed your zine, and Sub Pop hadn't told us where they had got I had thought I had thought someone at Sub Pop had done.
We didn't know how this worked
based on our specification, based on my description of because it was exactly what I described, and so then but it turned out it already existed, and we were all cool with it.
Tim's really
it was great. It was fine. But that, I mean, that it followed in the sort of idea that I think was important for the album, important to us at the time, which is what this sort of Splendor and Misery had a single figure on it. Because that was the first time we were writing about a person, whereas the idea of the other album covers are this sort of flat distributed field without a single point perspective, because there isn't a single point perspective in the record. So the idea that there isn't like a center, that it's sort of various grids on the albums, was part of the premise. So like a square of unspooled cassette tape, the fence, the teeth, the nails, right? They don't have like a central figure. They're equally distributed, sort of flat perspective.
And even on that first Death Bomb arc tape, right? It's like it's rocks or
it's rocks. Yeah. That one was just I don't know, a bunch of gravel. I think it was just gravel.
You and Deborah did that,
yeah. Oh. And then Shayna did the pre-release.
Yeah,
because we didn't have a big enough picture, so we had We didn't have enough gravel for a 12-inch. We only had enough gravel for a tape.
For a tape.
What does the wriggle cover art fall into that pattern at all, or?
No.
Oh wow.
No,
really
because
doesn't.
that was like a throwaway thing. Like that was a because that was initially conceived to be just that image, which came from a zine Maxi had of 80s business cards of English sex workers.
Yeah.
And then I redrew it to be not super clearly a woman, right? I made the limbs thicker, took away the like obvious breasts, but was like, and took away the high heels and gave him a little bit of a belly, so it was more androgynous. And it was going to be just for just the song Wriggle, right? That was that it was like this. It can be a single character because the song can be about it's one song.
Yeah.
But then then the project grew, and yes, that does not fit the rule. But then the rule was sort of like right, it was different original like Xerox paper covers were for each of the different streaming services because it wasn't going to have a physical release. So it was, the Xerox pink, Xerox yellow, Xerox green, Xerox blue were for each of the different places it was going to go. And that became the sort of fun little trick of it, that it was a fake cassette that never existed in any physical form, but that even had like edition numbers, right? Like a noise cassette.
That's so fascinating to learn the origin of that image, because I was using a lot of those same business cards for the art for the sex work compilation that we just put out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I had no
Oh,
idea.
is that the same? Did you have that same zine that Maxi?
I don't know if it's the exact same zine, but it's that same sort of art, those business cards that you're talking about. Yeah.
But because so Maxi I met when I was doing Captain Ahab. She was at a show potentially. I think it was that bar around the corner from the Smell. That had a bunch of metal shows mostly. Oh, there was like the bar, like 2 doors down from the Smell.
I mean, Jalisco and Pete's were the two I remember. Those are not. Or
No.
Five Star.
Yeah, is. So I had a
is
show
that still there?
I have no idea.
I think it
I had a show at 5 Star.
Well,
Maxi was there. Maxi reached out to ask if I would help like co-produce and mix her record with her band. So I did a bunch of that with her. And I, again, these ideas in the tank, right? Like thinking about like there were a lot of bands at this time. It was like early 2000, like mid 2000, that were like female front person with male producer in the back, with these incredibly like sort of coy and passive and submissive sort of female vocals. And a lot of these bands I really like, right? Like I'm thinking of like Miss Kitten and the Hacker, or well, I don't know. That's the example, because I love that band. But also there's this like this is incredibly like close and quiet and submissive delivery on the part of that stuff. And I just felt like I heard a lot of that. And I was like, hey, what if a band existed that was the opposite? It's like still male producer, female vocalist, but it's all about like stepping on men's balls and like kicking them in the it's like the reverse of that, right? It's like incredibly aggressive. And talking, I pitched this idea around for like I had this idea sort of kicking around, and I eventually sort of talked to Maxi about it, and we created the record. There's Death Bomb released it. It's this record Tawes. We created this band Tawes out of that idea. And around the time we were making those tracks, this was sort of like, because around the time we were starting clipping, it was like I ended Captain Ahab, and so rather than like do things that were just me, I was trying to I started a lot of other bands at the time, right? And this Tawes project with Maxi was one of them, and there are a couple others that never even got that far, right? But And so
But yeah,
Maxie,
she had that.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, Maxie was just around, and we were recording this stuff, and we were hanging out and doing this thing, and she had this book, and we had her do vocals on what is it actually called? Hot Fuck No Love?
Fuck No Love.
With the song with
Which
Cake.
is something she says on it.
Yeah, that's what we titled it. The song with Cakes. I don't know. Anyway, so again, synchronicities, right? It was all sort of in the sort of air at the time.
Yeah, she had the book.
She had the book.
I came over to while she was recording, and the book was here, so I just hand copied one of the images from it for that cover.
The book was research to try to come up with the band name and logo and idea for Tawes, or what that band was, that I don't think we'll do any more of, but I really like that stuff.
Yeah, but yes, so that one does not fit. That does not fit. It's very easy. We make these rules and then we break them, and then because we forgot we made the rules or whatever, but it happens. But yeah, that does have a single figure. That is a good point. Yeah.
Croyo wanted to ask about a fan favorite song, God Given Tongue. What is the background of that? Did Brian Lewis Saunders write the spoken word part and you guys wrote the rap part, or was it like a more collaborative process, or did you approach him, or?
That's a video I didn't send you that I found is actually, I do have video of Brian telling us that story. It's David sitting like upstairs from here in our living room. It's David sitting on a couch. They're both wearing headphones, and David just listens to him tell this story, which everything Brian says in that song is a true story of something that happened to Brian. And again, we were like throwing every idea in the tank, emptying the tank, right? Throwing every idea at this record. And so the two sort of outlier songs that didn't make it on CLPPNG, God Given Tongue, and the one Brian with Brian Chippendale. We loved. I don't remember why Brian was in LA.
Brian Chippendale?
Brian Saunders.
Oh, Brian Saunders.
Sorry, they're both named Brian, but they're spelled differently, so I know what I'm. Yeah. But no, maybe he was in town to do that movie with Larry. Maybe he was in town to do Trial Run. Anyway, I don't remember. But I had met Brian Lewis Saunders on previous Captain Ahab tours. He is a unique, fascinating, incredible artist doing just like wonderful work. And when we were thinking about collaborators who could be on this record, he was somebody. I don't remember if he was going to be in town anyway, and so we just said, hey, come over and tell us a story, and then we'll cut your spoken word with David responses, or I don't really remember what the idea was.
I remember what the idea was, because I walked out of a class I was TAing at UCLA because he called me, and I was like, oh, I gotta take this call. And I can picture where I was standing, and I pitched to him the idea of doing a song that was what I said it was a tribute to. There's a Lil Wayne song on the Carter One called BMJR, where Birdman just talks shit, just like over the top of it, and Wayne cuts him off, and then he raps, and then Birdman comes back. In the hook sections, it's just Birdman just talking like it's an interview, just like talking, just like ridiculous shit about getting money. But it's like not to a click. It's just free. He's just talking, and then Wayne jumps back in and raps every time the drums come back in. And I sent that to Brian, and he was like, "I have no idea what you're asking me to do." I was like, "I'm asking you to be Birdman on this song, but tell us any crazy ass story about your life, man, because you've got all of you've had so many fascinating experiences, that just like that thing you do when you ride in a car with you, where you tell some crazy ass thing that happened to you. Just do that, and then we'll make a song around it." But I sent him this like Lil Wayne and Birdman song, and he was like, what
are you talking about?
Are you asking me to do?
Yeah. Because that's what Brian's project really was at the time. He called it stand-up tragedy, and he would just tell, I mean, riveting and horrific stories, And I mean, now he's much more of a sort of a conceptual artist. He doesn't really perform anymore in the same way.
Yeah, I mean it's performance art, but it's like weird long term, like month long,
sensory deprivation.
Yeah, like it's more you can't watch the performance. He performs and then documents it in some sort of way. So it'll be like he wore glasses that made the world upside down for a whole month and never took them off, and then documented his experiences of that stuff.
The third ear one was the most upsetting one.
Oh man, they're just
so rough. Yeah.
It's incredible what he does.
Brian Louis Saunders is an absolute treasure.
I mean, yeah.
What an incredible movie.
And that song, I remember that story very well. I have no idea what I wrote for that song. I haven't listened to it since we put it out. It
was on the Japanese only.
I know.
We took it off the album and because we needed something for because the Japanese market loves well, it's because CDs are really, really, really expensive in Japan. So to get Japanese customers to buy the Japanese release of albums and not bootleg the American release, Japanese releases always had special Japan only songs to convince Japanese buyers to spend like the equivalent of like $25 instead of just stealing it online. So they were sort of so we had to keep a song off.
What Sub Pop told us at the time.
A little enticing thing for the Japanese market. So that's how that ended up on there.
And the Japanese also had its own version of Williams mix.
It had its own Williams mix. That's right. It had its own Williams mix. And its own CD skipping on ends.
Because we're like, while we're at it.
That's right. That's another one. That's another different version.
Is the Japanese one different? I thought, because I've ripped them all, and I thought that was the same as the digital one. I might be wrong. I should look at it again.
Look, honestly, of all of us,
yeah, you are more of an authority on this than we are.
Yeah.
But I think
I really thought it was different. I have a vague memory of doing. I have a vague memory of being like really self-conscious because I think I mastered that section of the Japanese CD because by that point Sub Pop was so sick of our bullshit that they were like, okay, we're not paying for fucking Bernie Grunman to master the distortion at the end of the Japanese. And so I did that and I was just like, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing, but if this plays wrong in every Japanese person's CD player, it's the end of this band.
I should just upload all of them because I know I have all of them ripped. I should make them available to people.
The world is waiting.
Yeah. I know the Japanese release is cool because it has Brian and it also has that run out track on there, and so it's actually like CD quality versions of those. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought that was only on the LP.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a mistake.
No, I believe you. I believe you. That's amazing.
But I had genuinely forgotten about that one too.
Oh, Run Out. Yeah, that was a cool.
I love Run Out. Run Out is so cool. Yeah.
That was a silly little thing we did that no one.
I should go back and I would love to listen to that vinyl again and see if it works. My feeling is like it doesn't actually work. The idea was you feel like you're in the Run Out groove.
Yeah.
Listen to it, but there's no real way to test that, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to. Well, we did this with the ends 7-inch, and then that side C of the album where we tried something that no one who's ever cut an LP had ever managed to do before, which is to have a continuous sound that comes out of the groove of the record and then hits the run out groove and then keeps playing, right? We were told that no one has ever had a sound continues, like if the last sound of the song slips seamlessly into the run out groove such that it just continues forever, that you can't tell, and it doesn't quite work because you hear a bump against it.
Yeah,
but no one could actually do it. But we're also potentially at the time those are the only two records that do that don't have silence before a run out groove. You can put a loop in audio in the run out groove, but it has to have silence as the needle crosses that wide thing.
That's not my memory of it, but yeah.
What do you mean? They both do that.
Yes, they do that.
And that both times those were cut at once at Bernie Grunman and once at wherever the other one was. They both were like, no one,
Erica,
we've never had
I
to,
think.
Erica. They're like, we've never had to do this, and we hate you. We hate you for asking.
Well,
It may have become a more common thing since then, because I know I have something that was released afterwards, which is 2018 Gumboot Soup by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. The last song on there, it has a continuous run out groove that loops the end of the song.
Oh, really? It
Yeah.
actually comes from the song into it?
Yeah.
Who cut that? I wonder.
Spiders.
My understanding was different because my understanding was my memory of this, and you could be right, is that it actually was the opposite. That we delivered it in such a way that we're like, oh, you have to cut the run out groove separately, and they were like, no, it just comes out of the track, and whatever you get, you get. You can't decide what's in the run out groove. Like it just happens in the moment when we cut it. And it has to be in the tail. And that's how we've done it ever since then.
Sure.
But at that time, we didn't know how that worked, and we delivered separate files. We were like, we want this to be the exact run out groove. And they were like, that's fucking impossible, you boy.
That is exactly what
that's how I remember.
That is exactly what we had.
Is the opposite.
Because we had,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that we wanted it, we also wanted it to be seamless where we wanted the illusion that it didn't bump at all.
Yeah.
And they said that there is no way that is at all possible.
Yeah, that's really ahead of time, yeah.
Well, and then we made the locked groove side of that record, which was its own fucking nightmare. Well, and that we realized I was just like, oh, I'll send you each individual loop that's exactly the right length, and you'll put those in the run grooves, and they're like, no,
That's not how this works.
A minute of that looping, and then we'll punch into it, and it'll happen at some point in that, and hopefully it'll line up. And it worked out, but
yeah.
I mean, that was definitely me learning about how like record cutting works, which I of course
We never
still
actually
don't
seen.
know how it
Yeah.
works, but I had really never dealt with it in that way.
I've never thought about that before, but for those locked grooves, they would each get shorter as they go closer in the album.
Well, they're
because
shorter in space, but not in time, because
It still takes the same amount of time to put
there's
it
a
around.
Calvin and Hobbes about this.
They're moving faster at the end. They're going slower, so they're quieter inside. And they're shorter in distance, but it's the same time that it takes to go around. They're all 1.33333333 seconds every single.
Did you compensate for that? Did you put the louder ones like closer to the middle, or?
Yes.
No, but also what I forgot about this in Run Out. In Run Out, there's a funny little trick where David's rapping does not fade out. He in fact walks away from the mic while rapping. So the fade out is natural, and it's the distance between him and the mic, and he leaves the vocal booth. He like keeps rapping and walks away and leaves the vocal booth. So like that fade out is not official. It's not like a fade we drew in volume. It's he walked away.
Wow, I forgot about
That's
that.
amazing.
I forgot about running
from the mic.
this conversation.
Run Out there was a little transition between the pre-roll and the thing of just like looping fence footage, and I put that Run Out, the sound of the click over it. Because I feel like I forget about it every time I listen to the vinyl, and then I'm about to take it off, and suddenly David starts rapping, and I'm like, oh shit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad that works. I totally forgot we did that.
I have another question from someone named Chris. They said, "Dear David, I don't think I ever thanked you for folding my clothes at that Airbnb in Edinburgh after I rudely claimed the washer and dryer first. Did you work at Montgomery Ward? How and where did you learn to fold so impeccably well?"
That is clearly Christopher Fleeger.
Is it really?
Who else?
What a dick.
I
love that game.
Sorry. Okay, an actual question.
I worked at Pier 1 Imports, but I don't think I learned how to fold much there.
How does your background in acting and theater inform your performance and storytelling in Clipping's music?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably works more the other way around, but like the separation of disciplines, it has always been. I think I started rapping and acting about the same time, you know, like I was like 13 and was doing plays and writing rap songs. And so like they're not so, they've just, I hope I've gotten better at both as I've gotten better at being a person, you know? So yeah, I think the most into the theater part of it is, you know, the skill that crosses over most between our shows and our recording process and my like live theater performance work is just the breath control stuff. So yeah.
This person was also interested in like talking about your writing process for, you know, obviously for all the clipping stuff, it's not you playing a character, it's narrating a character's thoughts, but does your like development of those characters and their thought process, is it similar at all to how you develop characters that you do in theater or in film, I suppose?
Yeah, no, it's closer to writing screenplays, you know, which is another thing I do a little bit of, or it's closer, it's writing. So yeah, and the which in both cases, especially if you're writing for television, which has to be fairly concise, like it's about what you're leaving out, you know. So yeah, it's all writing with constraints, and so like the rhythmic constraint or the time allotted for a scene constraint or the whatever, but yeah, but I don't know in terms of like how I would work on a character as an actor. It feels a little bit different in that it's different every time, just based on whatever the project is. But like writing is writing, sort of, is what I think if you write enough things, you start to realize like, oh, the same things matter to people, or the same things matter to you as a writer, and you sort of try to infuse everything you do with those things. But the difference with the clipping songs is like the specific, whatever specific rhythmic constraint we've either chosen for the song or whatever cadence I've decided to stick to for the song or whatever, those, you know, those are particular to the rap stuff. But in terms of developing the characters, it is mostly about the kinds of scripts I like to get are the ones with enough for me to fill in the blanks myself as an actor. And so like the same is true of writing these characters in the music, right? It's I have a certain idea, but you don't want to, I think the stories and the characters feel more alive, kind of the less of that you put in there. The more space for existence.
Are there any characters in the clipping music that you feel particularly attached to or that you had a fun time with writing?
Oh man, I don't know. I sort of like all of them. I think it's hard for me to, you know. I mean, who I can't remember. Yeah, like Mike Winfield is has been around a lot. I think about Mike Winfield often. You know, all the story songs are particular. Like those characters have come back into my mind more than once, so they stick around. I really like. What's the song that Ed Balloon basically wrote?
He did?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, whatever that character sort of ended up being, I like a lot. I think that's like mostly thanks to Ed. Yeah, I love sort of I really love how most of our features honestly sit in our work. Like what I like about a lot of those songs, particularly the ones that exist on the horror records, is that we've managed to create space in the stories for characters, even for people who weren't necessarily writing as characters, you know? So I find that to be really impressive. Like, I'm very proud of that and like excited by how those characters show up in those stories.
What is that?
This is the KXLU thing we were just talking about.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
there it is.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my questions here. Let me pick a couple more.
Skills.
Sorry,
he did find the KXLU show where we picked multiple songs as inspiration for each song on the album. He found the folder of all that.
I found the folder of all the songs, not like a recording of that interview.
No. Yeah, I mean, not us talking about them, just what we brought to the station and tried to do.
I'll send it to you.
Great, I can post it on the subreddit or something for people to look through.
I mean, yeah, post the list, not
The list, you know, yeah. I mean, sure, you can find all the songs, but yeah.
Let me pick a couple more here. I think we're running on time a bit. What's the most unethical way you've recorded music?
Unethical?
Unethical. I'll leave that open to interpretation. I know, I love the stories about all the different field recordings and stuff y'all have done. It's the one that stands out where it's like...
Definitely stolen, you know, like in movie parlance, if you steal a shot, meaning you do something in public without a permit. We have definitely gotten busted recording things when we shouldn't have.
I mean, I've told this story a million times before, but the time I felt the worst about doing a field recording was when we were recording the outro from Mid-City, the Get Money, Get Money, Get Money, which we reamped through a car, and David was driving, and the three of us were, and we're like, great, is if while we were recording this, we drove through the alley where the smell is in downtown LA, and we drove through the alley forgetting that there was a big anniversary show that night that we were supposed to have gone to that we didn't go to because we were working on our record. And so the alley was full of people that we knew that David didn't necessarily know at the time. So Bill and I crouched in the back, and this is the recording that's on Mid-City. Bill and I are hiding in the car, hoping not to make eye contact with literally it's Brian Miller and
it's
Stephen
everyone.
Cano, everyone
it was at the anniversary of the Smell, the venue in LA.
And we had sort of spaced on being oh no, we're busy, we're working that night. And then we drove right through there while recording that thing. And I genuinely feel bad about that.
We could have done that a different night.
We could have done that a different way. Yeah, for sure.
Well, also the footsteps at the beginning of
Body and Blood
were Deborah Golden
in UCLA
in a UCLA classroom that we did not have permission to be in, and that I was worried about getting.
Well, it
would have been fine.
What I've learned in my 10, 11 years of teaching at UCLA since then is we absolutely had permission to be there and do whatever the fuck we wanted in those rooms.
We also got busted kicking a garbage can down the stairs at a parking lot in a night at UCLA, where the UCLA police did ask us what the fuck we were up to,
and we were we're students making a student film.
Yeah. That was mostly true. What else? I'm trying to think of I feel there were vaguely dangerous. One of the takes that didn't get used of the drums in Dream was not unethical, but it was slightly dangerous. I remember being worried about pulling over where we did on this little mountain road.
Or are you thinking of Run for Your Life?
No.
That was fucking scary. The one that didn't work. That Run for Your Life take. That was a bad
one of the Dream takes that didn't work was we were in some mountains and we pulled over to the side and tried it. We were with Deborah, is how I
yeah.
And we were just on a. There was a sense that if someone had come around the curve too fast, they totally could have hit us with our. I'm trying to think of what. Yeah, unethical.
Unethical. We try to be pretty ethical, I will say.
Those are
conversations buried on Double Live that are
Oh, those are unethical.
Some of that is unethical. There's definitely people on Double Live who don't know they were being recorded. I mean, I think if you're recording at a concert, there's like there's no expectation of privacy, which is at least the law in California about recording audio in public. Like you can record audio in public in California as long as there's no expectation of privacy. So like pointing a parabolic mic in somebody's window of their home and recording their private conversation, that's illegal and very definitely unethical. I mean, of course, legality and ethics don't always align, right? And I think recording people in public when they don't know they're being recorded and then using that for your own purposes, I think that is unethical. So there's some stuff.
The only one is the only one that doesn't necessarily always sit right with me is the security guard at one of our shows who's on. We won't say what city he's in. He'll never hear it, but we have a clip of, I specifically grabbed a clip of him talking shit about how much he doesn't like us. And he was sitting outside of the venue, and that's where he says, he says, if this guy's not done at 11:30, I'm gonna go up and fart on his table.
Yeah.
And then someone asks who's playing tonight, and he goes, I don't know, MC Lucky Duck.
Yeah.
And I kept those on there.
How can you not use that?
Because I was like, that's amazing. And he'll never hear it. He'll never hear it. And you can also hear him playing Candy Crush on his phone. I cut in like a little bit of him, like you hear us in the background, and he's like just playing Candy Crush on his phone really loud.
Absolute hero.
But yeah, he fucking hates it.
It's my favorite part of that album.
He does like name some people specifically, and we bleep those names or cut around.
We do bleep those names. Oh yeah, he tells a story because he tells a story on it. That's really the one. He tells a story about he also works at a strip club, and he's telling a story to someone outside about a fight that he had to break up at the strip club, and we bleeped out the names he says. But he'll never hear it. He has no idea. He has no idea. He hated it. He didn't know the name of the band at the time.
You'd have to look for MC Lucky Duck.
Here's that's really bad about. It's related to CLPPNG. And Inside Out, there's a drum of someone going, hey, 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 hey. There's that like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's our friend Phil.
Phil Van Hest.
That's Phil Van Hest.
Oh wow.
That's right.
There was some Captain Ahab related thing for KXLU where I made like a DJ mix of unreleased tracks, and he was around at the time, and I had him come in and just improvise a bunch of terrible radio drop, and that's an A from one of those, and we never asked him or credited him.
Or told him.
I'm sure
he does not know that's his voice. That's right.
Yeah. So that's unethical, but also a thing that I'm sure he won't be upset about.
Yeah. Yeah. I would tell him today if I saw him.
Yeah. Maybe I have told him. Sounds like the sort of thing I would have told him, but that's Phil Van Hest's voice.
Unfortunately, none of these are like really that.
No.
They're clearly not that unethical because we were just like excited to try to.
Well, and it's a catch-22 because if we had actually done something truly unethical, we wouldn't say it right now. Also,
I would hope we would be so embarrassed that we would not do it.
There's an uncleared sample on Mid City.
I can think of two.
I don't.
That reminds me, there were several people who asked if there are any plans to repress Double Live or do anything further with that project. No.
We have a bunch.
Yeah.
If we were planning a tour, which we're not going to say one way or
album ever, and we were going to tour. You should come if you want Double Live.
If it was on the West Coast,
where we don't have to bring all those on a plane.
Yeah,
we might have some with us
within a certain time period.
There are a number of copies of Double Live sitting in my closet.
So if you come to see us, ideally, it's possible that you could get a copy of that, a physical copy of that. I also, if we ever repress it, we're going to repress it on just black vinyl because good God, I fought so hard for those to be picture discs, and they sound like dog shit. Picture discs are absolutely like the surface noise of picture discs. Well, because you have to, the grooves can't cut as deep into the record, so they're way high on the surface. So the surface noise on them is this uniquely unbearable, just hissy, bright
And those are the best picture discs.
Those are the best any picture discs have ever
Like,
sounded.
they just don't.
Yeah, that's as good as they can sound. So yes, I would love for there to be black vinyl versions of those one day in the future, so that they actually can sound nice. I don't know.
Let's do a final audience question. What makes a song fun to play live? Did you have any favorites on your recent European tour?
Well, our recent European tour had a special guest, which made it.
Yeah, those were fun. Everything with Sharon was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Splendor and Misery is still my favorite. So being able to see all those spirituals live was, was incredible.
Crazy. We've never really been able to. I mean, we played that whole album at the album. We had an album release party where we tried to do pretty much every song. But since then, we haven't really played any of that stuff.
Yeah, we always play. We play Baby Don't Sleep, and we play
Baby Don't Sleep.
Paramount.
And Better Place.
Better Place. We play a lot of those songs.
Those are the ones that like lasted in the set.
We
could play.
We played like Break the Glass on the tour of the Flaming Lips and stuff too. Right?
Well, because we were touring that album, yeah. But like, what's made it past that tour are those 3 songs.
Yeah.
So it's,
so it's fun to like show.
But doing True Believer,
we did True Believer, which
is like one of my absolute favorite songs we've ever written.
Yeah.
When her story
out of that,
like my favorite thing.
I was fucked up, man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know what does make a song fun to play live.
I know I'm seeing a lot of videos of that Tipsy cover, especially of Flieger jumping around in the balconies.
Yeah, that one's usually fun. That one's fun for different reasons.
Flieger and Victoria.
Yeah. Flieger and Victoria made that fun wherever we were. It was also fun to play that song for European audiences who have zero context for. They were, for the most part,
didn't know that was that we were doing a cover.
Right.
We're just like, that song is great.
So that's fun. I mean, like, what's fun? The songs that have been in the set a long time, like have now there are people who have seen us enough who sort of like, there are moments in the songs that happen live, which is like funny to me.
You still laugh at Hamlet.
I laugh at Hamlet every time.
I'm like, every night I'm like, not gonna laugh at Hamlet because I know what's gonna happen and it's not funny to me anymore, and it's very predictable. And then when people scream Hamlet, it's very funny.
It's so funny.
That make us like the Fish of rap music. Like,
yes,
if you've been to enough shows, you know what the call and response, like the Rocky Horror call and response is.
We are just a jam band. We just jam exactly the same way.
Same way every time. Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking of us as the Fish of rap music for a long time.
That was and you were like, what was the trajectory? That's it.
I'm sure the Red Rocks show is coming any day now.
I would absolutely play a Red Rocks. It's beautiful. The place is amazing. I'd always wanted to go.
Well, I think it's time to wrap it up. I was wondering if any of you have any final thoughts of a decade past, kind of the release that put you on most people's radar.
Something I was going to say earlier, because you talked very briefly about Story 2 and then never really went into it. That Story 2 also feels like a real, like, sort of big moment in development of this band, in that we always have a lot of ideas in the tank, and then right at the end we're like, wait, there's all this stuff we haven't done. How can we put it all into one song? And so Story 2 was the last song we made for the record, and it was like this sort of culmination of like, we didn't make a sequel to Story, which we thought was a funny idea. We didn't do a thing in odd time signatures. I don't remember what other ideas, but it felt like very last minute. I know, and we can't talk about that.
I know. I just thought of two secrets on the albums we cannot talk about. Damn.
That's unethical.
Those are unethical.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Those are truly unethical. Holy shit.
I know what they are.
I don't feel bad about them. They are just they're stolen recordings that we cannot talk about.
Yeah. But
Oh, and yeah, those are good.
yeah. But that's become a trend for us, is that we near the end of making an album, we're like, what? But wait, we have an album's worth of stuff. We haven't done this, and we haven't done this, and we haven't done this. Oh, so clearly we just put those all in the same song. And so Story 2 is one of those. Pain Every Day is one of those. These sort of these repositories for all of the ideas that all happen at once. I don't know. What's the one on?
I'd have to look.
They usually being pretty
Well,
good,
really,
so.
I think of They're Addicted and Visions as being one album. So really, Pain Every Day is that song. That's the last thing we made. And, yeah.
It's interesting to know that it was such like a last minute addition of trying to do all the elements, because for say that again, sorry.
I said we didn't really think that we had the idea, and we didn't think that Story 2 would work. It was really a miracle. I remember Jonathan laid out a skeleton of how the time signature changes were going to work with just
I just use 808 sounds.
just like basic 808 sounds.
It was
so it's just a click.
It was like hi-hat keeping the beat, crash cymbal every time there's a
it's a change.
There's a change, and like some other sound. It was like I used the rim shot sound or something for the bars to denote the bars, and then kick and snare just to capture the feel of every time.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it was just those drum sounds, and I think that's what you wrote.
And David wrote. Yeah. We didn't work on the beat until David showed up with like, "Hey, I think I wrote something," and rapped it, and we were like, "Oh my god, this works!"
Work. Yeah,
we now have to go back and actually make a beat that goes with this.
And there's been a handful of things like sort of conceptual rhythmic things. I mean, Story 7 is another one of those, but there's been a handful. Like we made Story 7 exactly the same way, right? Where it was like, well, let's just lay this out with like bare bones drum sounds. But there's been, I remember I made that shepherd tone rhythm thing that never really worked. The song that sounded like it was,
it was getting faster.
Faster, and then the tempo half, but somehow that didn't work at all. I mean, we'll revisit that. There's like ideas like
we'll get there.
That version of it didn't work, but we'll make another one.
It occurs to me that another thing that makes songs really fun live for me is when these guys like come up with a new transition idea that's like oftentimes like in sound check, but they're just fucking around and something fucking cool happens. Usually Jonathan like drops something in a weird way, because I just like to run songs during sound check, and it's often so cool that it becomes like my favorite part of the set. What was the one that just had? It was Body for the Pile into.
I'm gonna say the name.
The name is so fucking hard. That shit is really good.
Yeah, soundcheck is the opportunity to like really just like throw curveballs at David.
The new one that I heard at that LA show a couple months ago was Get Up into that new The Mirrored Shade song. That transition is so good.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I'll come back around. We tried that song out a few times, the new Mirror Shade song, and you'll hear it again.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the other thing that I'll say is that like your existence, Lucas, is pretty wild to me. It's like pretty amazing that
too much
that you have taken such care with this stuff and archived this stuff and like know these things better than we do. It's really, really incredible. So thanks for really watching over our music and creating a place for like our fans of us to gather. It's pretty incredible.
We're the only reason any of this happens at all. We like talking to you like this, so it's like this is how it happens.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. This is a really special anniversary because this is the album how I found the band. So, it's kind of the 10-year anniversary of my introduction to you guys as well. And so to be here and be able to talk to you about it like this is really special, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing it.
Lucas, really, thank you so much.
Thanks for doing it.
Is there anything we should look out for on the horizon, whether as a band or individually?
Could say.
Don't.
And we've dropped no clues.
We haven't accidentally said anything at all about any further projects.
Possibly say.
I'm considering doing another long form live stream this election cycle, I must say.
Whoa.
Yeah. Given that
Stay tuned.
this is from that Discord that sprung up around the People United tape loop.
That was a different one actually, but that was still yeah, people still talk about that a lot, so that'd be really cool to see. Yeah.
Considering I've been thinking about it, that's a thing I could tease. I know. I mean,
what's the most hopeless fucking thing we could?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel as hopeful as it did.
There's no, yeah.
I mean, this time it's really a disintegration loop.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I have a new record out on Death Bomb Arc. That's a split with John from Deerhoof and Raven Chacon. MacArthur Fellow and Pulitzer Prize winner Raven Chacon, our friend of, at this point, 20
something years. Yeah.
2 years. Dude I've known forever. We've known for a long time. Has a MacArthur and a Pulitzer. Hell yeah. Fucking
That's
brilliant.
For one of the Death Bomb anniversaries, right? It's 30th or something
I don't
like
know.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked to him about it earlier, but I have to give another thank you to Brian Miller because interacting with him online and, you know, talking to him, it gave me so much exposure to these communities and just actually being able to
oh yeah, of course.
Brian's a good one. He's really
He's been one of our best friends for
since
he asked him for a ride.
That's a really good sort of condensation of who Brian Miller is. He wrote somebody he didn't know, and then will you drive me 2 hours back and forth to this show that I actually haven't thought of a way to get to otherwise. And here we all are. I have 2 movies at a film festival this coming weekend in LA. Documentary called Unbroken and a feature called Hauntology, Parker Brennan, that I scored. A film festival called Dances with Films that's at the Chinese. I unfortunately will not be in town, but I have 2 features there that I scored. Pretty cool, fun.
And David is on some TV shows, I think. I don't know,
so.
Maybe.
Am I? Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Snowpiercer season 4 is on AMC now, which is cool. I think the 20. God, I probably shouldn't say the wrong date. I don't know when it's happening, but if you, I don't know, look on my Instagram. Yeah, that's coming out, and that's it.
And you know, just keep your eyes peeled on the internet in case we announce anything soon.
No, I'm pretty sure we're done. Right?
Yeah, we're done.
No new music.
Well, thank you again for joining. Very special to be able to talk with you on this anniversary. I really appreciate you guys doing this, and I'm sure we'll be back for maybe not for Wriggle. I feel like we covered Wriggle pretty well here, but Splendor and Misery I'd love to discuss. It's still my favorite, and so
in 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
2016?
That sounds right. Yeah.
September 10th, 2016? September 9th, 2016.
Wow.
And then we were on James Corden on the 16th, I think.
Jesus. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
That's the day my cat died. Is that the case?
That's right. Yeah.
My cat died the day we were on James Corden.
Whoa.
Oh. Well,
on that note.
On that note.
Good night, everyone.
We'll end there. Thank you everyone for attending.
Poor dog.
Yeah.